It was good. It was funny because you were like, well, tonight's a good night for it. I'm like, all right, perfect. So then when I got back to the hotel, I was like, well, I could crank that run out real quick. When you text me, it'll be a little bit. I was on my way out, and then I was like, well, I was only going to do like 3 miles. And I was like, well, if we talk about it, I'm going to do 4 miles. So that way it's worth talking
Have you got your phone on your watch or something?
No, I have. I brought my...
Because I was imagining you running, like trying to text off your watch or something.
No, I'm like a full-on dork, just with both hands, holding it in front of me so that way I don't trip. Yeah. So anyways, we're live, and today we're speaking with Ricky Gilmour from KYB. Most notably, at the moment, Eli's suspension guy. So the season, I would say the recent switch to Yamaha looks like it has been pretty successful for the time that Eli's on the bike. But thanks for taking the time to do this, man.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
It's real cool. So a little bit about you. You're from Australia?
Yep. How
did you get into motorcycles, and where did it all start?
Just my dad getting me a bike, and then you see it on TV, but it wasn't that easy to see the races as a kid in Australia. And then you just meet other friends, and then just racing flat track. And then I realized I wanted to ride like motocross. You see that on TV. And then I did, I was racing a little bit, but not too heavily. I did work experience at a bike shop. And one of the mechanics at the bike shop, turns out he lived up the road from me. His name was Brett Bellairs. And he was a professional racer at the time. And then, so I was a kid looking up to him, and I looked him up and all his results and that. And it was just a whole new world to like what's possible and what's out there. Because I was into a lot of school sports, and then you see that and it's completely different. And like, so you just want to know everything about it and just become consumed with it. And he taught me a little bit about how to like work on bikes and that stuff. And my dad is a engineer, like a machinist toolmaker. So he got me into bikes originally, and he was like always showing me how to work on bikes. But all the stuff like trying to learn come from my dad on like how to work on it, and then what to make and make my own parts and stuff like that. But just doing like the local thing, and then trying to get to at least like a state level, and then race some nationals and race Supercross. And at the time you think it's super high level because you're in it and you're amongst it. And I feel like I'm probably just as fast as I was back then, but you go to the local tracks now and these kids on 85s and 125s are all over you. You're like, man, but that's just the evolution of the sport. And then being over here in America, it's like so big. So like everyone from Australia looks here from the outside looking in, and you just want to be here. You see the tracks on TV, and then the internet started getting bigger. So then when I finally came over, Dan Reardon, he was a professional racer, Geico, and he got me over to help him train. So I came over with him, and it's just like a whole different world. Like once you get here, and it's like it's crazier than what you even think your biggest dream. Like you see all the guys on TV, and you try to get as much info as you can, like on the internet and all that type of stuff. That wasn't that big when I first come over, but now it's information's accessible everywhere. But back then, it's like the curtain's up, and you just want a glimpse into it, like so bad. But it's been awesome to get to this point so far. But
what year did you come over?
End of 2008.
Okay. And then how old are you?
42.
Dang, you
42. Yeah,
you
42.
wear it well, dude. I thought you were in your 30s for sure.
Thanks.
But yeah. So then, what level when you were staying with racing back in Australia and stuff? What level were you getting to? And
I was like local pro, and I would race national pro. And it was only 1 year I did like all the nationals, but it's tough, like as a privateer. And I was on some smaller teams, and I would always do my own suspension on the team that I was on, but mainly just state level racing. And then I'd try and do the national Supercross. And like it's tough, it's fun, but it's tough too, And then just all the state races, and then when the national would be in our state, try and race that national. And I would ride with friends that were racing the nationals. So you think you can, when you're practicing with them, you think you can compete at that level, and then you go and race, and you're like, man, I'm struggling just to get points or 15th, and it's a whole nother level that these guys can get to. Like even, like I say, back then, 15 years ago.
Yeah. I think that's something that blows me away about it too, is that you see a lot of guys, especially exactly what you said, where you end up at a local track with them. You know, I remember on the road race side, we would be cruising by, and kind of like the real pros are getting by you, but you could kind of keep a glimpse of them, you know, keep a sniff, but then you see the data or the lap times drop tremendously once it's a race environment. And it's like, and it'd be on like lap, 15. Yeah. And that's always blowing me away. Kind of super humbling.
Yeah. And that's one thing, like I thought, like I was saying, you try and my friends that were racing national level, and you can hang with them practicing, but then those good guys can just get to a whole nother level on race day or when it counts. I got hurt a lot. Probably I was hurt like way too much. And every time I come back, try and ride out of my comfort zone to get back to where I was, and you get hurt again. Just keep getting hurt. And then that's what I've learned now, like being around the top guys here. They'll only push like 100% practice in maybe their sprint laps or when the dirt or the conditions are good. And then on race day, they know like the limit. But that's the thing. Like back then, I didn't know the limit. I just thought you had to push hard, because we would see like Carmichael and Stu on TV, and they're pushing so hard, and Stu's having those big crashes, but it was all about just giving it everything you got. And then now I see, like I said, being around Eli, the attention to like the details that he has in his track prep and the bike and how everything has to be. Like it almost has to be too perfect. And I wonder, like, is it fun when it's like that? But he needs the conditions to be good, the bike to be good, tires to be good, everything, so he can push his body to the limit, to push the bike to the limit. Like I didn't understand that back then. Like I said, I used to get hurt a lot, and then now I see that like a lot of these younger guys that are pushing, trying to make a name for themselves or trying to get there if they get hurt. And it's just a different approach now. Maybe that's these training facilities and just the evolution of our sport of trying to stay injury free and how to do it. Like there wasn't really that knowledge 15, 20 years ago like there is now.
It almost seems like as the sport evolves, it's a competitive environment, obviously, right? So when you see one guy that, if everybody's doing similar things, trying to get there on similar equipment, and then you see one guy he's up there pulling results and they break away, then you pick up on, well, what's that guy doing? Mm-hmm. And then like when Ricky is famously, he was going and training a bunch more, is what it seemed like. I think he was training with Alden and putting in all the work, and then next thing you know, well, I'm going to train too. And then everybody starts training, and then now that's the new normal, and then and also the bikes are evolving at the same time, and then so you fast forward a decade or two, and then now everybody's training. The bikes are incredible, and then you get kids starting younger and younger at those facilities, but it's also you're still learning. Like as a series, as a industry, we're still learning like what works and what doesn't. And then that's where it's getting nitty gritty, where you're seeing some stuff works for some guys and some guys it really doesn't. But one thing's for sure, the guy that really truly wants to be at the top, they find a way to get at the top.
Yeah, and it's like they have to be like intelligent too. It's kind of like motocross people. It's like from the outside looking in, like a brute sport. You just pin it and just ride hard, but it's not like that. The guys that are the fastest and the most successful, they're some of the most intelligent of how do you get to that speed. Like I could never figure it out, and I kept getting hurt. And you have times where I'm riding good and I don't really know why. And you're like, man, I had a good day, and then you can't seem to replicate it. But these good guys can replicate it, and they've tapped into something that's what makes them so good. But now there's more and more of these kids that are that good. Like I saw like some footage of some kid on a 65 at the Charlotte race jumping a triple. I was like, how does he even know to do that?
The timing too.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
that's the evolution of what we're seeing. I'd never even thought that would have been possible.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you watched the 65 race during the night show.
I didn't get to see it, just like the highlights.
It's worth watching because the kids are battling with each other. Like one kid, I think some kids got bad starts and stuff, and then one kid was able to kind of pull away. And then the battle for like second and third, and that little pack right there, like they're going over through the rhythms with each other, and they're like looking at each other, and just running each other out. It was really cool.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's exciting to see that because it looks pretty promising. Like as much as we say this or that about people coming up, like there's going to be some little animals coming up that are going to be great.
Yeah, did you see Ben Tamley was at the track today? Yeah, with his son Levi. So
I didn't see that.
Yeah, you have to catch up and say hi to them because
pretty tight with Craig Valen.
Mm-hmm.
He was a mechanic for a while.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He's a good friend of mine, but
yeah,
he always talked about Ben.
It's curious to see. Yeah, it'll be like the second generation to elite level pro, like that I grew up watching, like same age as me, like Ben.
Yeah, and
then now his son. So
that's cool.
It's going to be cool to see.
What age were you? So you always did your own suspension. Did you ever? Was there a time when you were proficient, or where you got confident? Like, you know what, I'm good at this. Like, this is my jam right here.
It took a while. Like I said, I was racing pro, and when I was growing up, I was doing it, but making a lot of mistakes. But that's the thing. I made so many mistakes that I learned from it, and then. My dad, he was an engineer. He would just let me make the mistakes. And often, a lot of the time, it cost like a lot of money having to fix the things I broke. Or he would have to make them. So it probably wasn't until I was about 18 or 19 that I started to get like confident enough to do it. But even then, I remember being 20 and at a Supercross track at a friend's place. And I quickly wanted to like make a rebound change, put some more rebound in, because I was struggling with a seat bounce jump. And I messed it up. I took some shims out, and it takes away the spacing. So when I tightened the nut, I just ran out of thread and didn't have any clamping pressure on the shim stack.
Oh.
And it was getting dark, I went straight over the bars. And when I picked the bike up, I could feel like it was loose in the rear end, and like I should have felt it when I was bleeding the shock, but I'm like 19, 20 years old trying to rush to get the thing built before it gets dark. And so I'm like super confident, like this is going to have more rebound damping in it. I'm going to hit this thing so hard it's not going to kick straight over the bars. So like I've learned a lot the hard way. So
I bet you never made that mistake again.
Nah, a lot of things like I've done like that.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff like that. Like trying to learn to ride Supercross and trying to learn how to build Supercross suspension at the same time. So it's a pretty bad combo. Like I said, I got hurt a lot. But I had some friends that were a little bit older pros, saw me what I was doing, and would try and give me a little bit of advice. Like, hey, you can't do that. Like,
protect you from yourself.
Yeah.
Jeez. No, so then when speaking of Supercross, if you were to take a motocross setup and compare it to a Supercross setup for people listening, what would the main differences be? Because we would assume obviously Supercross is a bit stiffer, but then that's about as deep as I'd get on it.
So you've got like a piston with the oil passes through a piston, and then underneath it you have your valves, which is shims. So it just depends on how much oil you want to flow through the piston is going to determine how stiff you're going to make it. But then it's a lot more complicated than that. Like you have a base valve and then a main shaft valve, so you have to increase both at the same time, and because it's like a lot of people talk about pressure balance. So it's like if your brakes, they become spongy you boil your brakes, that same thing can happen to the shock or the forks, and it becomes dangerous. So like I said, that's how I figured a lot of stuff out, like the hard way. But the main thing you're doing from motocross to Supercross, when you go to Supercross, you're just restricting the amount of oil flow. But the way to do it, to make it compliant on the little bumps versus the higher speed hits, it's the shaft speed that you're trying to determine how much dampening you want to make. So it's almost you're trying to build, if you can imagine a graph, like a line table, left to right graph, how you want to build that force. Do you want to build it linear? Do you want to build it progressive or regressive? And that gets back to what type of rider it is and how the rider rides. Someone like Eli loads the bike so much, so you need a lot of low speed control in the rear for him because his legs are so strong. He rides like he's 220 pounds. Like he just forces the rear wheel into the ground. So to be able to build enough damping to support the way he rides, it's pretty difficult because he wants it to be compliant at the same time. And then switch to the front. Some guys, you know, a lot of people pick on how soft his forks are, but his timing's pretty good. He can get away with it, and then it adds up in the corner speed. So, and then vice versa, when I switch to motocross for him, he's opposite. The rear needs to be a little softer, and then the front needs more control because he brakes so hard on the front brake, which the front then needs more control initially to stop the pitch. So it can get like really complicated, and then it can also just be try and keep it simple. How stiff does it need to be? And it doesn't need to be any stiffer than it needs to be. That kind of sounds too basic, but you don't need to have 3-4 inches of your fork from full bottom because you're just wasting travel, because once the fork stops moving, and then this is your department, like the tire compresses and it can only compress so much, and then the tire will slip. So if the fork stops moving, the tire can't do its job, and then guys wash out. So I saw a little bit of that at last weekend in Charlotte. Like the guys that were washing out, it was just, you know, people trying to overshoot. Like we didn't know what was going to come into these. You and I talked about it earlier, like what to be ready for this race. And one thing I saw, like everyone wants to make sure the bike is as safe as it can be for the rider, and the guys are going so fast. So you kind of need to overshoot the safety mark, and then you can come back on performance and give it more comfort if they're safe. And
so to speak to the safety part, are you talking about the holdup that the bike has because of say the Supercross rhythms or the G outs that they're going to go through in those rhythm sections?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like you look at the track map and you see there's a rhythm there, and like there could be some quads, there's triples, there's table faces, triple onto tables. So you need a certain amount of damping for that hold up, like you said. And then if it gets ruddy, the dangerous thing is when pegs drag in ruts, and those guys are going so fast with so much force in between the jump lanes, so much G-force. Like you do not want to like drag your pegs and have a big over the bars. So there's that to think about as well, and then versus compliance. But like most teams went into that race stiffer than what they needed to. Yeah. But the main thing for me is it can be too stiff as long as it's balanced. It's okay. But if it's out of balance and stiff, then you got a problem.
Well, we saw that too with how stiff the setups were, and then that first session was so greasy in the morning. Because it's nice overcast day in the morning and whatnot, and because the setups were so stiff, and the tires they're like you were saying, they were blowing through the carcass of the tire, and so you had guys that were coming off. They're like, "I swear my tire's flat." And we're like, "No, man, it's what you've been running, you know." And next session they went out, and you know, and they were able to sort through that. But we inspected a lot of stuff because the guys had that sensation, and it's crazy to hear that, you know, how much the setups affect each other, but they all have to tie together. You know, the force has to be evenly distributed. You know, and the feedback getting up to the interface of the handlebars and the pegs, you know, the rider's got to be able to, it's still got to, if you think of a square edge on the track and you go over it, that sensation needs to be rounded off by the suspension and the tires, you know, and the chassis.
Like the suspension needs to compress somewhat, so then there's some weight of the bike, compress the suspension, there's some weight on it, and then the suspension can push the tires back into the ground. And that's like traction for me, when the tires are pushed into the ground from the suspension. When it's too soft, and then if you had an arrow and pointing up, the force is going the wrong way, and then that's when the slip comes. But a lot of the guys had the slip because they weren't getting enough force pushing the tires into the ground, and then that's where the slip was. But you could see a lot of guys in the 450 class, how quickly the teams reeled it back around.
It's incredible.
The teams are so good. That's why you and I were chatting, and we're chatting about this. I don't really want to say too much. You know, the other teams will pick up on it, but the teams are so sharp. Everyone's watching videos and learning off each other, and then that gets back to the evolution where everyone's getting so good with all the dart fish and watching each other, and people switching teams, and that like information travels. So you can try and do your best to protect it, but everyone's got a keen eye at this level. And
And that's, I mean, even myself, you know, when I'm sitting watching the race with Marshall, like we're super, super critical of what's going on, because they're trying to learn, you know, he's still mechanic at heart and just likes to appreciate where technology's going and the evolution of the sport. Right. So he's watching, he's like, oh man, I noticed this guy's, you know, his front end's sitting pretty low, and it sucks to say, but there's been times where we've watched the race. You can see it sometimes on the broadcast where we watch and we're like, hey dude, this guy pulls a whole shot, right? But his front end sucked down. Mm-hmm. And you could see he's starting to fight it a little bit. And it's like, man, if he doesn't back off a smidge, you know, he's probably gonna lose it, you know. And then sure shit, a lap later, the guy's on the ground, you know, lost the front end. And it's incredible how being there and seeing it over and over and over, you see it done right, mm-hmm. and you see it done wrong, and then you see when it's one or two clicks off and how big of an impact that makes, you know. And that, to me, that's part of the reason why I even wanted to do podcasts was I really enjoy the technical part of what we do. Mm-hmm. And I like to geek out over it. Yeah. And I love to learn about it, you know. And so I'm sure there's got to be other people out there that like to learn a bit and dig into it. You know, so that was, if I can relay some of that, that's the least I can do, you know, to give back to, you know, the people at home and stuff. I've
been on the, like, this side of it, you know, and you try not to, but you read some of the comments that, like you said, you watch, and a lot of us watch. I watch the other bikes, and you're like, you pick on it. You're like, they're going to lose the front end right there, and something does happen. You're like, oh man, why didn't that team do something about that? But then you take a step back and realize, like, well, I'm in this position. Everything's a compromise. Yeah. So you know that is a problem. But you could have an even bigger problem on another part of the track, and it's dangerous. You'll keep the rider safe on this part, and you just have to deal with the bike in this situation. But the riders, when the gate drops, you can't, like, hey, take it easy here. Like, they're on full autopilot, full just 100% focus on just doing what they do during the week, so it becomes autopilot on the weekend.
Would you say that separates some of the great riders from the good riders, is the ability to adapt to, as Marshall would say, the bike's never going to be perfect. Yeah. Sometimes you're just going to have to.
Yeah. And like I said, like, that's why it's changed so much the past 10, 15 years. Like, these elite guys are super intelligent. They know the weakness of their bike and what the strengths that it can do. And that's a lot of these production bikes, they're always going to come with strengths and weaknesses, but each rider's different too. Height, weight, speed. And some bike might suit another rider more than others. So you just try and improve, maximize the best things of the bike and limit the downfalls of the bike. That's pretty much like what we're all trying to do. Like, maximize the best things we can and minimize a frame might be a little bit rigid or something with the bike. And then you just try and massage that with a bit of suspension or a bit of reband or whatever you can do. But we're always compromising. Like, race day, during the week, you're always trying to make a compromise. And then you can get to a point where a rider, like you said, they can adapt. And then if they can learn what the bike's going to do, the biggest thing is these guys know what it's going to do. If it's bad, they still know what it's going to do. And then that's the safest thing for them as well.
We try to do that with tires with consistency, something that we pride ourselves with. We want it to be as consistent across a broad range of conditions, where it's like, even if in certain circumstances it's not the best outright grip, you know what it's going to do, and it's going to do that across the whole, every condition of the track. Ideally, you know, that's what we're striving for. And then so, you know, that's something that we get into with, like, tire pressure. Mm-hmm. You know, we end up going, we aim to go higher nowadays, because I think the technology in the tires, it provides sufficient outright grip, mm-hmm. and then you can complement that by going a little higher in tire pressure, and that'll allow the tire to have a more consistent profile. Mm-hmm. And so then it's going to do the same things in different, when you hit different obstacles or imperfections in the dirt, you know, different variables. Having that consistency to be able to anticipate that lap after lap, then you can get more to that autopilot you're talking about, because you know what you're going to do, where sometimes it's grabby going in and then it does something weird mid-rut. Well, then if you bump up your tire pressure, it might not be as grabby going in, but it doesn't do that weird thing in the rut. And then on the way out, it's fine.
Yeah, you touched on it too, like tire pressure, and that's another thing I've noticed. Like even me from 10 years ago, tire pressures were so much lower.
Yeah,
and then now the G-force and the speed these guys are carrying into the jump faces, you can't have the tire roll like what you're explaining. And then your tire technology gets better for that to try and maximize the grip in the turns, but have the tire not roll up the face of a ramp. And then, because when you start seeing some of that, like then we start chasing it with the bike, and then you guys give us advice. Do this pressure, and we're like, sometimes we get so caught up in tuning the bike. It's as simple as taking advice from you guys, because you guys come around, hey, run this at this. Yeah,
and honestly, anybody listening right now, I'll tell you right now, if you're having any weird stuff happening with any brand of tire, if it's inconsistent or weird, or you feel like you're chasing it, bump it up a half a pound or a pound or so. It just to see, and like, I mean, if I'm going riding, I'm 34 years old, and I'm not that good of a dirt rider anymore, and I'm not setting hot laps when I go out. If anything, if I go too fast, I'm gonna get tired too fast. Then I got to pull off. So, but what you could do is you go and just say, hey, I want to go and see what this tire does. So I'm going to ride it right now. Say you run 13. You should be running at least 13 in the front and 12 in the rear. And then you go and you see how that feels. And then you come in, bump it up a pound, both of them, just to see. And then come back or go back out and see how different it is. You'd be surprised. It still has pretty good grip, but it does the same things a little bit more consistent. And then you get to a point where it's too high and you need to bring it back down. But just to feel that, and I remember Bones, you always used to tell me, he's like, dude, go in like 4-6 clicks on your stuff and see what it feels like. You don't have to go and try and set a fast lap. Just do it purely to see what it feels like. Yeah. And it might be something you like. Yeah. And because I never understood that a lot of times, I don't want to say production stuff, but what I would get my hands on as an average Joe C rider, more times than none, you need to go in on your clickers when you start going faster. And you're like, oh, well, it feels harsh. And then you go in, you think to open it up because it feels too harsh. You're going off a sensation and it makes it 10 times worse. Yeah. And then you're just fighting it. And then I remember reading like, hey, if you go in stiffer, go slow it down a little bit. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh, this thing's bitching, and you're hauling. Yeah.
I think everyone owes a lot to Bones over the years. Like, reading in anyone, all these guys, like Race Tech with the Paul Theed and Ziggy, these guys, when they do magazine articles, like I'd just buy those motocross action magazines and just read everything I could, because these were the guys, like I said, behind the curtain. Yeah. Try and read like any of that stuff. And they've probably helped the whole industry massively.
It helped it grow. Yeah. And that's what's so beautiful about racing, because like we were talking earlier, racing is where all the R&D gets put to the test. Yeah. At the end of the day, there's millions and millions of dollars and thousands of hours going into producing the best equipment, the best bike, and then the riders putting in the time getting the best fitness to be the best riders, best version of themselves, right? Yeah. And that's all to win. Mm-hmm. But what are you winning? You're winning. We're on the best bike with the best crew with the best rider. You know what I mean? And then obviously, like our stuff, whatever works best for us, it ends up in production most of the time. Yeah. And it's no different with the race teams. And that's the beauty of it, to get to see all that get messed with, and all the changes that you make, or go this direction, go that direction, and you're learning as you go. And then you look at guys that have been in it for years, as far as the teams go, and the amount of data accumulated. Yeah. And I think that's to talk about, how we saw everybody rebound very quickly at Charlotte and make those proper adjustments, is because you go out and obviously the conditions weren't where you thought they were going to be. And they bring it back. Oh, it's doing this. We know exactly why. We saw that. Hey, we went the wrong direction. We thought it was going to be this. It turned out it's that. So we're going to set it up for that.
Yeah. A lot of these guys on the race teams, as I can speak for the teams I've been on and the team I'm on right now. Like, we got Brad Hoffman, Jeremy Coker, and Rich Simmons. They all could have been detectives. When you come back, like they download from the rider, look at the bike, look at what's going on, and try and find wear patterns or whatever's happening, and then watch the video and break it down. Like these guys could have been solving like murder mystery and the stuff that they can do and turn it around and then get it back at. But that's not just our team. That's, like I said, other teams we were competing against, all the manufacturers, everybody's bike, every time it went back on track, they got better, and lap times were getting better. When the conditions got worse, lap times, they were still able to get down to what they were doing the day before in the qualifying times. It's to be able to do that, like, it seems like not a whole lot, but like 4 seconds. Like the average time was like 1:18, and then qualifying, I'm not sure who it was. Was it maybe Jet or Kenny got into the 1:13s on Friday?
It was Jet right at the last, the last lap too.
Yeah, unbelievable. And then come race day, the track's at its roughest, and then the guys are down into the 1:14s towards the end of the race. Like, but that's like a testament to these teams and what they're able to do, and then give these talented riders something to feel comfortable on, and how quickly they turn it around from session to session. So I was a little, with this new schedule, we had the 2 practice sessions on Friday. I'm like, kind of, what's it for? It's not qualifying, but it's gives us more time to learn the bike and set the bike up to make it safer for these guys to go fast. And then that was it. The next day, these guys are doing qualifying times in the motos. Yeah. So the riders are unbelievable, and the level that these teams are at, it's like cutthroat, because if you don't respond and the other team does, you're gonna get left behind really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I'm excited. It's funny. I was talking to Will Christian about it. We were sitting there, we were watching the Coop and Jet in practice, and we got to kind of almost bench racing. Mm-hmm. And you think about it. I mean, we're round 29. We just did the first Super Motocross playoff round, and we're watching Friday practice, and we're looking at Coop and Jet on top of each other basically in practice, and and you've been away from your family, you're ready for the season to be over, and now all of a sudden you're excited to see what's going to happen tomorrow at the race.
Yeah, honestly, I was a little negative into it, like kind of burnt out coming into it, and then like you said, that like where Cooper's behind Jet, and you just want to see what's going to happen. Yeah. Like, is Jet going to pull over and pull in behind Coop, or is Coop going to try and learn from Jet? And like these guys, they've known each other years. It's not like, sometimes the fans might blow it up into more than what it is, but I'd say it would get pretty cutthroat when it's coming down to the wire championship. But most of the time like that, it's like, how do you without being rude, like just dick measuring. Yeah. And then they're trying to learn and see who can throw it down and go fast and learn from each other. They're all trying to like learn from each other, because they're all watching video of each other. They all know each other's tendencies and how each other races and who to be cautious with, who not to be cautious with. But it's a whole dynamic that makes it great for the fans to be part of.
So back more to you, when you came, so you got into doing your own suspension when you were late teens and stuff, or getting really serious about it when you're trying to do Supercross. At what point? So when you came over to America, you said that you were you came over with your friend to help with training, but were you wrenching, or were you riding still, or did you start work? What was going on?
Yeah, I was still riding, and it was to end of 2008. I was still racing, and then he asked me to come over and help him train, and then I was his practice bike guy at the same time. And I always, because I was doing suspension the whole time for myself and other friends, and then, like I said, the race teams that I was on in Australia, but I always thought it was so unobtainable to get a job over here. And then you just get to meet people, and I was going to the test days with him, and I'd learn and I'd watch and see what was going on, and you start chatting to some of the teams that he was on, and then you begin to know people, and then you chat about suspension, and you're like, oh, like I do know some stuff. Yeah. So, and then you that's how it went into getting like job offers to come to work for some of these teams, and then go from there, and then trying to just soak up as much as I can and read books and look at other, like Formula One racing and MotoGP, look at other things that they're doing, because they're so much further ahead of us. Even mountain bike, trying to spend some time to see what they're doing in other industries and try and make it better for what I'm doing, so I can try and make myself as good as I can be. But it's tough though, because you're so busy just trying to get the suspension built, serviced, get it to the next race, and you need time for development and ideas. And that's mainly what my job is at KYB, is like development on work suspension. And then if I have problems with it, I'll send back to Japan what my problems are. Or I'll even make parts. And like I said, my dad's an engineer in Australia, so I'll get him to make some of the parts that I can't get made in Japan, because Japan takes a long time. So he'll make a lot of the parts, send it to me like prototype. I'll ride it myself, make sure it's not dangerous, because I'll ride it. Like, I won't put Eli on any of that stuff or Webb. And then I'll ride it, make sure it's good, try and put like 8 or 10 hours on it that it won't break, and then I'll have them try it, and I'll send the prototype to Japan, get them to make their version of it. Then I can get it put into somewhat, not production, but it's becomes like on the parts list that I can buy from Japan, that Star can buy from Japan. But being able to do that because of access I have to my dad, I'm able to make these parts and then get Japan to make them. And it's cool. Like, there's a fork that we're running right now, and it's pretty different than what anyone else uses. And a lot of that is like ideas that I had, and I'll throw it to my dad, and he'll be like, that doesn't make any sense. You need to do it like this. I'm like, oh. And he doesn't really know suspension, but he knows like the component of the engineering of how it needs to work and how it needs to fit, because space is always like an issue. So doing that, and then I'm working with Japan, and then all the guys at the shop at KYB California, they're all pretty sharp, pretty switched on too. And if I'm missing something that's obvious, like, they'll point it out to me as well. But it's fun, it's challenging, it's difficult, but it's cool being able to make my own parts. And then my shop manager, Bill Orr, he's pretty relaxed about it. And he's was at Honda for like 30 years and would tell me a lot of the development. He was working on the production bikes. So a lot of what he uses and how to deal with the Japanese and how they respond, because it's a big communication thing. It's difficult, like the language barrier with them. And then how to get things you want, and then proof of concept, and then that it's safe, and then get it to the riders. It takes like a long time, but it's fun. Yeah. It's really fun.
No, it's cool to have a finger on the pulse too.
Yeah.
To really be at the forefront. Because that's stuff that ultimately, I mean, down the line, it would end up in production, I would imagine.
Yeah, some of the stuff that I was working on like 4 years ago is probably going to come out in 2025.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you see
cool.
it. Yeah, like they showed us some of the stuff that they want to put in 25, and I'm like, I'm looking forward to it if it makes it in there. But no one will know like what I really did or anything. It'll just be fun to see it, make it from concept to production bike, because the testing that it has to get through to be safe for production is pretty rigorous. Mm-hmm. And then those guys that have that role, like Steve Butler, his whole testing crew at Yamaha, they're very rigorous with that. And then they're close with Japan too. So it's really cool working with those guys.
That's cool. I like when we see that stuff on our side too. And there's times where we'll come out with a kind of a different pattern or something, and then the guys like it, and that's always a good feeling. Mm-hmm. Like when you make a pretty big change, and then the guys, most of the time, I would say riders are like reluctant to change, and so you got to be tactful with the timing of it. Mm-hmm. And then but when you put something out and it's outright better, it's just like, damn, nailed it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
and the hours and hours that went into getting it to that point.
Yeah. And then when you see it in production and stuff, like when we did our new tire, the MX-34, I got a chance to ride it, and it's just way better.
I haven't ridden it yet. Everyone's telling me it's good.
It's so
good. I still love your guys' 3S.
The 3S? Yeah.
So I'm like,
the front tire.
The front.
You're talking about the front tire. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the 34 is as good as the 3S.
So there's durability stuff that was addressed with the 33, because the 3S, it would chunk knobs sometimes, but a lot of that was too low a tire pressure.
Yeah.
And because grabbing too much, flexing too much. And then the 34 really, that was a tire that it was performance driven. It should perform way better. Mm-hmm. The 33 did a lot of things better and good, but durability, we need to make sure that you cover that base with that. And so the 34 is kind of like a little bit of both. And then just also how it handles the load at a lean is really cool. Yeah. And that's what, and to hear riders talking about that, and then to go and ride on it yourself and feel it for yourself. For me, at least, I'm not like I said, I'm not that great of a dirt rider. did a lot in with road race stuff. So tire feedback is one thing I am pretty sensitive to. And I was really impressed with how it felt, because it felt comfortable right out the gate. Like for me, there wasn't anything that I thought, I'm kind of lacking a little here, but it makes up for it there. Mm-hmm. It was everything about it to me was better.
Yeah, I'll have to try it.
It's pretty cool. And there's stuff I was dorking out so bad. And I don't know about you guys listening, but to me, whenever I get a new set of tires, I'm stoked. There's nothing better. Even the look of the bike too, with the tires on it, makes it look brand new. Yeah, it's awesome. So I was really excited to do it, and they're worth trying for sure. The 34 is good.
Yeah, really I'll have to try it.
Yeah. So what year, what time frame was it when you ended up going to KYB? Or you said you worked with some teams and stuff, and then how did that all kind of evolve?
Yeah, so Daniel Reardon, he went back to Australia end of 2010. Mm-hmm. And I stayed, and I was just kind of doing like odd jobs what I could at Valley Yamaha, just day to day. Frankie Latham, actually, I would get paid like $100 a day, and then some days I wouldn't get paid, just however it would be, whatever the cause was. So he would pay me in like tires and engine oil for my bike, and then I met a couple of the guys there, and then Mike LaRocco actually called me and asked if I'd be interested in a job at Factory Connection, and I was like, yeah. So I jumped on that and went there, and then I was only there for a year. But
was it Factory Connection the suspension or the team?
The team. Okay. And then the race team actually did the suspension out of the retail shop. The technician at the time, lead technician, was Peter Page, and he was overseeing the retail shop and the racing. So we did it out of the retail shop, and then that's how I was able to become friends with Eli. I actually met Eli in 2009 when he was like the kid on the team. And then fast forward to 2011, I was only on the team for a year, and then because I wanted to do 450, so I went to Chaparral Honda, which was like Larry Brooks and Andrew Short was the rider. We did that 2012, and we won a race that year, Seattle. So that was like amazing. That was like, I couldn't even believe I was there and part of that. And then I learned a lot from Andrew, and then I got to know the Honda guys really well. And then the team, we went through financial troubles, and then the team closed down, and then I was not doing much. I was just trying to do suspension out of the garage at the family that I live with, the Scroggins family. Like I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't do anything. So they just let me stay there, and I'd work on their son's bike and take them riding and help look after them, because they were young boys at the time, like 17 and 15. I would drop the youngest one to school because Elisa of the family, she was going through cancer treatment. So I was helping take care of the boys while they were really busy, like trying to save her life, and that went really well. Like she's doing really good now. And then I got a call from John Tomac mid 2013. So then I packed up and I moved to Colorado, and I was living in their guest house, and I was Eli's practice bike guy for 6 or 7 months, and then Eli signed onto the team to be 450, and then I went back into suspension as his suspension guy in 2014 and 15 at Geico. And then I traveled with him over to Kawasaki, and then that didn't work out too good for me. Like I didn't really fit in. I was like the square peg in a round hole. Didn't really work too good for me, but Eli was still really successful there and able to do like great things there. And then I actually went over to Europe, to Austria, to WP, and then became good friends with Robert Jonas, who's the vice president. Like we still stay in touch. So I was doing that and traveling around the GPs, and we had like a testing budget, and Tanner Leok was the rider, and we just go around, and something I was going to ask you about, because the GPs back then, that year 2016, he would go to like hard pack races, and he had a testing budget. He would buy Dunlops, and then the super like deep races that were muddy, he would buy Pirelli, and he would change practice on a Pirelli, and then as the race became more hard pack, he would put the Dunlops on because we had the budget to do, and he would. I couldn't believe what he was doing, just switching tires, and for him it was all about the footprint of the tire and how big the tire was. So I learned a lot from working with him and then those GP guys, but that was only short lived, and then that took me to the end of 2016, and then Dan Betley, the Honda team manager at the time, he wanted me to come back to Honda, and then there wasn't really a spot for me, so he asked me to meet him in Japan. I met him in Japan, and Cole Seeley was doing a race there with his mechanic Rich Simmons, who's our crew chief now, and I flew to Japan, and then I had a meeting with Dan and then the head KYB boss, and then Dan convinced the KYB boss to hire me, so I was hired at KYB and then assigned to Factory Honda. And then that was all through Dan Betley and Gothic J, Jason Haynes. So that it helps to have friends in the industry, that see the best in you, because I was kind of down and out on my luck there for a while, and then didn't have a whole lot going on, and wanted to just be so involved with it. But Dan saw the passion I had for it, and then he figured out a way to get me back to Honda, and then I did that, and then I was Cole Seeley's suspension guy. We did a little bit with Kenny here and there, because Kenny would switch KYB and Showa back and forth a lot, like what he was feeling most comfortable on. So I was focused mainly on Cole. And then Cole got injured and retired, and then we kind of lost the spot on the Factory Honda, and then they went all to Showa. And then I just was in-house end of 2019, 2020, and then I was actually going to go buy a KX, and my boss, Bill Orr, he got a bike from Keith McCarty from Yamaha, and he's like, hey, I need you to start riding this and developing these forks. It's a set of forks that I'd worked on 2 years prior at Honda, and I couldn't get them figured out, and I kind of just gave up, put it off to the side, and he said, you need to figure this out. KYB spent a lot of money on these forks that you wanted, and they don't work, figure it out. So pretty much for a full year, 2020, that's when I was developing a lot of stuff, and like I said, getting my dad to make a lot of parts. And it was COVID, so everything was shut down. So, but my dad still, he was in Australia, he would go in, get his machine shop going, make me the stuff I needed and send it back. And I was actually living in Colorado with Eli when everything was shut down, in the guest house, and we were just riding every day. And J-Mart was there. We were all just motoing down and having fun, and I was just working on suspension at night. During the day, I'd just ride with the boys, try and do motos with them, and try not to get lapped as much. I'd always get lapped once, no matter what, but trying not to get lapped twice by those guys. But they love rubbing it in. Yeah. And then it was funny though, trying to do my best lap time and trying to ride with them, and then them just going out and blowing it away by 12, 15 seconds. Just makes you realize how good those guys are. You think you're riding good, and they come and do that. So, and then from developing all that stuff, we went into a test with Star. Brad Hoffman had agreed to do a KYB test. So, because they were getting the 450 program, and it was to see if we could help their program, but it's pretty difficult because they're so successful with the 250. They had a formula what was going to work with the 250 and apply it to the 450. So, but he gave us a chance, and I was able to get some of the riders, Will Hahn, Colt Nichols, at the time that were helping with the development project, and they agreed that had some good feeling to some stuff, and there was some potential there. So Star went down that route and used us KYB, and then they had the 3 riders that year. It was a massive year, just trying to keep my head above water with 3 riders, and with the racing situation in those races where we would race 3 races in the 1 week, and that was really, really difficult. But we came out at the end of it, and then Dylan, he came out and just smashed everybody outdoors that year. It was unbelievable to see that. And just kept trying to develop some stuff going into the next year, and then we got Eli 22, and then that was really successful. So Dylan had that success outdoors, followed into Eli Supercross, and Eli again outdoors, and you were helping us at donations, and we were all losing our minds. I just couldn't believe what type of year it was. And then that's pretty much got me to this point, like where we are with Eli was doing really well in the Supercross and then got hurt. And then Dylan also, he had a concussion in Supercross and that really slowed him down. But he was able to bounce back and do pretty good with what he had going on at the end of this year outdoors. And then he was really successful. So good job to him and his crew, what they were able to do for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was it last week? He got on the box too.
Yeah. He was going for it.
That was badass.
That first moto. Yeah, it was good watching him get back to that level because I haven't seen him ride that good at Supercross probably since A1 2023. Like when I watched him A1 23, I was like, man, when Eli crashed, I'm like, I think Dylan could win this race. And then Eli got back up and come through the pack, and Dylan kind of got stuck there battling with Webb, and then Webb was able to break away from him. But Dylan rode really good then, and I was like,
that race with Eli coming back, like I remember standing in the mechanics area watching that race and watching him go by, and just like you knew he was gritting his teeth, and like you're saying, he's like a 250-pound rider on the bike. Like that whole him charging back up through the pack was a perfect example of that, just how hard he is on the bike to get every last bit out of it. And what was the most impressive was the fact that he was riding like that at A1. Because the year before, when he was first on the Yamaha, I remember seeing him, and he didn't look the best, but the bike looked a lot better for him. It was suited to him, and it was interesting because it didn't look like a typical setup that he would that you're accustomed to seeing him use, So to go from that year and then the success he had, but then going into the following year and him to just be out there hanging it out like that was, it's something that that's why I think everybody needs to go. If you haven't been to a Supercross in person, when you get to see these guys ride, every once in a while there's something that'll stand out for the entire year, where it's just like they can't replicate that the next lap. They do one thing and you're just like, wow. Like I remember Ferrandis during a qualifying lap during COVID Cross, which was actually a pretty cool event for us looking back at it, where we were at the races and there's nobody in the stadium. It's just all industry personnel. And we were, mind you, we're socially distanced, but we all, it was just mechanics down on the track with the riders, and that was it. So everybody else is sitting in kind of proximity to each other, spaced out outside, and we got to the whole stadium to ourselves to kind of be fans, and see what happens. All the work is done. There's nothing we could do. We're just going to watch now. And so you just sit there and watch the race happen. And but I remember in qualifying, it was pretty cool because every time you get a chance to go watch qualifying, and you could see who's on a heater, and I remember Dylan, there was a section, I can't remember what it was. I want to say it was like a 3 into a corner or like a on off into a corner. But he went into the bowl turn so fast, he almost crashed. Like he was crashing through the corner, but stayed on it. And then he just like the nastiest body language jumping into the next rhythm section and did it perfectly. Like there's no way he could do that twice. And I want to say he was like 0.7 of a lap faster than the fastest qualifier. And some of those, track layouts that it wasn't permissible to have a big spread. Like the top 7 were within the same second of each other, and it was incredible to see, and you crushed it, and that's that type of stuff. You get to see it. Sometimes you get it caught on your phone. Sometimes you don't, but it's just, if you get a chance to go to a race, you get to pick up on that stuff. The broadcast does a really good job getting most of it. But sometimes there's stuff happening in like 10th place that you don't get to see, or if a guy's checked out, and they're watching the battle for second where the action's at, there's also something incredible happening way up the field that is just mind blowing. Like a good one for that. Anybody that's got any footage of Southwick, this year with the way Jet was riding.
Oh yeah, when he jumped into that pit. There's like a pit. Yes. He tripled into the pit and landed on like a 1 foot break and bump.
And jumped out like a little gazelle. I have a video of that.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I think you showed me.
Yeah. And it's just like the amount of footage I have of that kid doing stuff like that every lap. And that's one section of the track. You know what I mean? That was something huge seeing him on a 450 this year. It was tough to watch the racing because, I mean, you want to see everybody do good. I mean, you have a hand vested with the guy that you're working with. So when your guy does good, you're happy. Mm-hmm. You're a buddy of mine. Well, I want to see you happy. Yeah. You know what I mean? But Cameron and Christian, those are great dudes over at Honda. I want to see them happy. I want to see Zim happy. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's either Christian's going to be happy or Zim's going to be happy. One of them's going to be bummed. Yeah. You know, and that's the part that's so... It's like a brutal reality to the sport. There could only be one winner. Yeah. You know, but that being said, watching Jet ride outdoors and how efficient he is on the bike. Yeah. It's
and I say that too about like these top guys. You think they rode good on Saturday? You should see them when they're comfortable on their home track, what they'll do on Tuesday or Wednesday. Yeah. That'll blow your mind. But, you know, a lot of people don't have access to that. But when I'm at Eli's place in Colorado and I see some of the stuff that he's doing during the week, I'm like, I need to film this stuff. But like, I don't. He yelled at me one time. He was doing something through the whoops 2020 and he was going from the far right of the whoops all the way to the left, like zigzagging across the whoops, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I quickly got my phone out and I filmed it, and he saw me filming him and he almost washed the front in the next corner and crashed and like was yelling at me like irate, like went off so bad at me, and I was just like, whoa, like. But we had an argument afterwards. I'm like, why are you yelling at me? Like, don't talk to me like that. And he's like, well, I only nearly crashed when you started filming, but I didn't understand it at the time. But he's trying to focus on his craft, and I took him out of his element because my argument was, well, what are you going to do at A1 when everyone else has an iPhone on you? But I broke his concentration of what he's doing during the week because he's pushing the absolute limit during the week so he can back it down and be safe on the weekend. And I didn't understand it at the time, and we had a massive argument. I can look back now and laugh. I'm almost like a little embarrassed telling the story. I don't want to tell like his personality or anything, but we didn't talk for like 5 months after that. Like it was a pretty big argument, and then the next thing I got from him was a letter in the mail, like, will you be my best man at my wedding? Yeah. And then he calls me. He's like, did you get the letter? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you want to come up for dinner? I'm like, all right. And then this, because I was living in the apartments down the road from his Corona house, and then I just cruised up like nothing had happened. It was just back to normal. But like it took me that whole time of like 3-4 months that we didn't talk to understand like why he was so mad at me filming. Because I'm thinking I'm getting the footage of my friend doing this thing is really cool, but like it really, really like upset him that I like broke hhis concentration. Like I said, it took me a while to figure it out, but we're all cool now. And then we just look back and laugh about it. But that's how you were going to ask me like earlier about like what type of guy he is. I think maybe I just cracked into it, but like that's how intense and how serious the practice is during the week. To be at that level like that we see on the weekends, like you said, the stuff Jet does at the races is blowing everyone's mind. But I guarantee if you saw him or Eli, any of these top guys during the week, you wouldn't be able to. But then you don't get access to it. Like I said, I tried to film it and I upset Eli because I break him out of the concentration. He's trying to work on his craft to be the best he can be because he has all the pressure, all the sponsors, and all these people now that he employs to be able to do his job at the highest level he can do. So he's paying out a lot of money, but then he needs everything perfect for him to be able to do what he's doing to all of us to be on this ride with him now. And I'm lucky to be part of it. I kind of led us into that. Sorry, I don't know where I was going with that, but I thought that'd be a good story to tell.
It's funny. That he's a stand-up guy. He's maybe I don't want to say shy. I don't think it's that. He's a bit more quiet for sure. For the most part, you know, he's not the most talkative right off the bat. But then that guy's for me personally, he's been a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
Really, really cool dude. And I respect the hell out of him. Yeah. You know, and also to over the years and seeing him grow into what he is today, you know, as a father too.
Yeah, like I was saying, like when I met him end of 2009, he was like the kid, super quiet, and John would talk for him. And then now he's 2 kids, a wife, and like he has so much going on. He has another baby on the way, and then my wife's pregnant. She's got a baby on the way, and then my wife and Jess, they've become a lot closer now because of that. So it's just the evolution of life, and then we're all just lucky to be part of being able to do this through dirt bikes.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
And the people, like dirt bike people, like everyone's a different breed that's into it, but everyone wants to help everyone. Like you said, you want to see the other mechanics do well. And we get beat by one team, and the good thing is next week we have another chance to show that we can get better and try and compete with them. So like the sport's evolving, and I think it's going to be in a good place. Keep going forward, and it's getting more and more popular all the time. Even like the jobs, it's getting a little more cutthroat for the jobs too, because so many people want to do it.
When you see people trying to get into it, like if you had advice for them,
just like if you come and I've had people call me and message me, they get my phone number from other people that know me. Just come here and just have a resume ready. Just come here, whether it be like Anaheim and be at the local tracks, or motocross. Motocross is probably the most accessible you're going to get in California, with the teams are out there practicing, like Cowie. They're at Parla, Glen Helen, Mitch's Pro Circuit. They're there all the time. Like if you're out there and you're here for a riding trip and you're riding, go up and try and shake some hands and give someone a resume. What's the worst that's going to happen? Someone's going to throw your resume in the trash. It won't happen though, because people are always, it's like revolving, and people are always looking for somebody new, somebody enthusiastic. So just come here. If you want to be part of it, just come. Just get here and try and meet as many people as you can. And
it would blow, for the people listening, it would blow your mind how many of these folks here in the pro paddock, their stories they're all different origins, but they're similar in the sense of like, I was this guy's practice guy, or I was living with this family, helping this kid, or working for $100 a day.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that's like the going rate is, you know, $500 to $700 a week.
And even that, like I was working for free just to do it. And then it got to a point where I was good enough. I was good enough where I could work on stuff that the guys trusted. And then Frankie would pay me in tires. Like, so I say, just come and just do it, and just, I don't want to say offer to work for free, but get your foot in the door. But then in saying that too, it makes it hard for the guys that are established, because there's guys that will work for free, and we all travel every weekend, and it's a lot of time away from the family. And at the elite level, like, you want to get paid good, but it's tough because so many people want to do it.
Yeah.
And then it's easy, you know, you look at like Formula One, you hear about those guys, like the tire changing guys. People go, oh, I could do that. Those guys make like 200, 300 grand a year. But the pressure that's on those guys, and how much they have to practice just changing wheels, like that's the elite level as well, you know, like, so everyone wants to be a part of this, like, and like kind of getting off track, but like most people in motocross, they're good people. And like I said, just go up and introduce yourself. And if it might seem like they're busy, they're not rude. They're just focused on what they're doing. Just come back again the next week. Just go back again. Just keep showing your face, and people will remember you. And just be respectful and try and be humble when you're trying to meet these teams, because they're under a lot of pressure too. Like, they have to perform.
Yeah, the more professional you can carry yourself, I think goes a long way. And then being kind, you know, being eager but easy to work with.
Yeah. Like if somebody doesn't really have time for you, don't blow them off, or like, oh, F you or anything. Just give them their space. And like I said, you'll see them there 100%. The next week. Yep. They'll be there the next week.
Yeah. And then also keep it in mind, they when you do get a chance to talk to them, they probably came from, like I said, a similar story.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about that at dinner. It's we're all in it for the same reason.
Yeah.
It's either you're going to try to be the guy or you're going to get a job helping the guy.
Yeah.
One of the two. And it gets you on the other side of the fence and get to go watch the races and then see all that crazy stuff they do.
Like a perfect example of like from the bottom to the top is like Team Honda manager Lars Lindstrom. He was the test guy driving the test truck, washing practice bikes, washing test bikes. Now he's the team manager of Honda. And everyone can talk to him. Like anyone can go up to Lars and say hi, give him your resume.
One of the nicest guys.
Yeah.
One of the nicest guys.
He's got the most successful team in the pits right now.
Yeah. In the one of the most successful years for Honda in damn near 20 years,
Unbelievable what they did this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, I'm not even jealous. I'm just like I'm blown away. Like, man, like what they've done. It's great. Everyone would love to do that, but just getting one championship. And those guys got everything this year. It's crazy. Yeah. But that was years in the making to get that, what they were able to build and the camaraderie amongst the team and the dynamic. So team dynamic's big as well.
Do you like the chemistry of the team?
It's massive. And you've got to have a few key people that need to step up and be leaders. And sometimes they have to be a dick. But they're setting the standard for what the team needs to be. Like I said, Rich Simmons, he's always on our 450 team. If your shirt's not tucked in, you turn up in the morning, you're not ready, you're not together. Like he's go back in and get yourself ready. Or spend 5 minutes to get ready in the bathroom. Like you're representing the team.
It's funny you say that because he's when he comes by the truck. Like if someone looks good, I'll compliment him. Like, damn, you look sharp today. You know, and every time he comes by the truck, I'm like, damn, Rich, you looking good today. Yeah. But he looks sharp. Yeah. The dude's his hair is on point, shirt's pressed and perfect, like everything.
He's been dealing with like some pretty severe back problems this year, but never complains, walks head up, shoulders back, chest out, like trying to. And he tells you, like, be confident in yourself, like what you're doing here. Because even if you doubt yourself, these riders, they look to you because they have to go out and perform on that equipment. Like, make sure the equipment's safe, but don't carry your head down around the riders because you don't want them second guess what you've built for them. And when they go out there and they have to, I don't want to say like risk their lives because they're very calculated what they do, but a lot of things can go wrong. But just, like, do your best to present yourself and represent your team. And even if the team you're on's not that good, it doesn't matter. Still do your best because then you need to ingrain that like into who you are and then people know that. And then if you can get like a stepping stone wherever you want to get to or what you're trying to get out of racing, like what type of fulfillment that it is. Like I say that now, like being on a top factory team, but the fulfillment I get is like when riders really appreciate what you do. Like, because I'll try and do everything I can for them. So when they really appreciate it, like it makes it worthwhile. Like, because I'm at the shop a lot, leave there till like 8, 9 at night, and then I got to go like hour and a half, 2 hours of traffic on the way home. But it's fine when you're motivated and you're getting somewhere, you're working towards a goal. Then it's easy. And the riders that you're with, and it gets back to like what I was saying, that dynamic that Honda has right now. We've got a really good dynamic at Yamaha. And then looking forward to Eli coming back and then Webb coming on the team. Like it's new for me learning Webb. And then all these guys, they knew Webb when he was a kid and we've had to race against him and he's ferocious to race against. So I'm not sure how that team dynamic is going to be right now, but he's tense. And I've dealt with that with Eli. These guys that really, really want to win, they're really tense. And Dylan's that way too. He's quiet and focused and he's intense. Like, all these guys, and maybe that's probably why Jet was such a fan favorite this year. He seemed like he always had time for the fans, and he never looked like that intense, but I wasn't going to the races this summer. Maybe, how was he? Was he carefree? Like just
exactly what you always see on TV. I mean, across the board, dude. Yeah. I could drop off tires and that guy bro down with anybody. Like he's focused and professional, but the times I've been around him, he's always been pretty lighthearted. Yeah. As far as the spectrum goes for how intense guys get, he's hands down like
Yeah.
Like almost like AP, you know?
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like super.
I think too, he probably got to
good.
learn a lot from Hunter, like seeing what Hunter went through, and he got to adapt to that and apply it to himself. And because you see last year when Hunter had that incident with Gilly, Styles Robertson, the Husky. Yeah, like that was pretty intense, but he's, you know, he's so passionate about it, you know. These guys, like, they put everything into it, and he obviously, I think he broke a tooth in that crash.
Yeah,
like,
he chipped his tooth.
Yeah.
And his nerve was exposed.
Oh.
The nerve was exposed in his tooth. And,
I can see why he was fired up.
Oh, and I want to say, I can't remember if I saw him I think he was just telling us about it, but zero sympathy.
Yeah.
But they made fun of him. You know what I mean? Giving him a hard time between him and his brother. They had fun with it, and he was just miserable. Like, dude, I need to get this fixed. And but his tooth got chipped and the nerve was exposed. So because that was first moto, I think that happened. Mm-hmm. So he had to race a whole second moto with a nerve exposed in his tooth. You know, and then,
but you could see the leap he made, how he carried himself this year. Even when he had a lot of adversity, like broken ribs and crashing and bike blowing up, he carried himself really, really well.
Yeah, and when you talk to him, if you're a fan and you try to talk to him and you get a moment, like the dudes, those two guys specifically, it impresses me how nice they are.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking a little bit earlier, and I said like the intelligence of the top guys know when to express that emotion and when to keep it hidden or not, like.
Dungy was the key to that.
He's really good at it.
Dungy's good at that.
Yeah, I did see Dunge after that. We were talking about that 2017, that battle he had with Eli, and Eli kind of slowed the pace of everyone and bunched everyone up.
You're talking about Vegas.
Yeah. I remember Dunge crossing the finish line and like pointing at Eli and yelling something under his helmet. Like that's the first emotion I'd really seen out of the Dunge. Like. That was crazy.
When you think about it, though, that's the championships on the line the night of
everything.
Yeah, that was all of it on the line.
And then that's the only motion I ever saw out of Dunge, like his whole racing career, like that. You know, like he's kept it really reserved. But that's the IQ, intelligence that he had as a rider. And like, you know, you got to conserve some things and.
Yeah, and I think in his absence too, it's you see that you could appreciate that a lot more. Yeah, I know for me. Especially because I came in just as he was leaving, and you see what you see at the races, and you could empathize with a lot of when the guy's frustrated or when this is that. Like, I mean, I listen, I get it, you know, and to see or to kind of look back on how composed Dungy always stayed. I hadn't seen a whole lot of that since, you know, and it's not that that other guys are rude. Dungy always was able to stop, talk to a kid, hear their story, be selfless, a selfless dude. Even when all the stakes are on the line, everything for him, you know, he still puts other people first. Yeah, and like our athletes too, they're young, they're kids, and then they become young men like early. You know, like other sports like college football, like the age they're at, and our guys are professional at that age and what they have to deal with and dealing with fans and all these races every weekend. And so saying like, we got a pretty unique sport and there's a lot of characters, a lot of people like saying like me coming from overseas, a lot of people trying to get in, like almost desperate coming. Like I just want to see behind the curtain. And then now I'm here and is it everything I dreamed? It is and more. Yeah. And then and it's what you make it to, like what you get up for. Like I said, I do long days at the shop and then sit in a lot of traffic, but what you make it, like what are you trying to do? Like I'm lucky I get to develop suspension for top riders, and then the attitude that they have and then they give to me like motivates me to be better and trying to make the bike better for them and safer for them. So I'm lucky, like back to having a good crew and good dynamic. Like Star, what they're doing is a whole nother level too. Like the manufacturer is running the facility. Like Alden went one way as a trainer with the facility, and then like the KTM group use it as testing, but then the manufacturer, like the actual team owning the facility, is a whole nother level again. Like I guess Gibbs were trying to do it, like, and they were pretty successful with that. And then now this is a whole nother thing, like bringing the young kids through, and then the young kids are riding with the pros. So
what's going to be next. Like you were talking a little bit about electric bikes earlier before we started this, like what's coming next, and what can you do to keep the series going? Like a lot of people are going to be anti-electric. I got to admit, like I'm a little anti-electric, like because it's what we have now. But if there's another series like the Formula E, like Formula One cars, like you have another series and then integrate that and bring that in, maybe in these SMX rounds in a year, 2 years down the road, there's a class for electric bikes.
That's what I think. If not that my 2 cents means anything, but I honestly think having a spec class, you know, would be really cool. Just to get the feet wet and see what happens, you know, and then at least too, if you have a spec class, you can compare lap times. You can sit there outperforming, all that kind of stuff.
Then you'll see when the lap times start to get better, then that'll be like, is this going to be the switch that the manufacturers want to make? And
also too, ride one. Try it out. You don't, I mean, whether you buy one or not, but if you get your hands on one, ride one and see. You know, the times some years back in Urchica, it's I want to say they do the Formula E bike for MotoGP. I could be mistaken, so don't quote me, but I think that's the bike that they use. They had some production bikes I think they're based out of San Francisco, in America at least. And one of my friends was their technical manager for them. And so I got to ride one. This is a street bike. It didn't feel alien at all. When I got on it, it felt like a bike. I literally didn't have to think about anything when I got on it, other than I don't need to shift and there's no clutch. And he told me, never mind the chassis, I want you to really get on the power and feel that and see what you think. And I rode it out of it's a really steep, windy driveway, and I rode up to the main road, and then, you know, wide open. And the software that it has on it, it's the most efficient delivery of power, where there's zero wheel spin, zero wheelie, but as much power as it can get to the ground as possible. So you do that, and I'm telling you, it is the quickest thing I've ever been on. Like 0 to 1, I think it was like 140. I've never got there that fast ever. And it just like, never, the G-force never changed. You know what I mean? And if you get on your motorcycle and you put it in first gear and you whack the throttle, like that snap that it had that same thing without the wheelie or wheel spin. It had that all the way up to the top speed. It was ridiculous, you know, and that to me was just by sheer sensation. I respected it, and I'm like, this is when this gets refined and put in a package that's affordable, obtainable. It's gonna be hard to argue. You know?
That's why it'll be tough for the guys like me or like you know, that use, when we jump a jump, we kind of second or third, and you use that gear to jump the jump in as your speed limiter, so you don't over jump.
See, my buddy, I'm going to give a little shout out to Josh Mazakis back home, but my buddy Josh went and rode the Starkvarg in Spain, and he said instantly, like, all of that out the window. What you're talking about, zero worry about that. And he said, if anything, the advantage is going to be from being able to not have to think about it. Now that's not a variable, right? Now you're just focusing on what you're doing. It's 2 less things to worry about. You know, and him especially, I mean, he's a big fan of it, but also he's a damn good rider too. And for what he's talking about and what he thinks that the bike is going to be, you know, they one thing that he was told over there was they're not setting out to build the best electric bike. They're setting out to build the best bike, period. You know, and there's a lot of obviously all these guys put a lot of development into it, but with them in their infancy and starting off of a clean slate, they're in control of what they're going to put on it, right? So it's not like it's hey, we have a relationship with this company, we're going to do this. It's like, hey, we want this because we think this is the best, we're putting it on there. And I would imagine there's some bugs to sort out because of the resources of what they have. I'm ignorant to the resources that they have, whether it be suspension or this or that. But as far as the package and the interface and how it works as a motorcycle, he said it's outstanding. I don't know the numbers exactly, but he's confident. Like if we go to Hangtown, he could get on his YZ250 that he's worked on and thousands and thousands, hundreds of hours, I should say, of riding on it, and get on the Varg and within a couple laps be faster than he's ever been on his YZ.
Yeah, I just wonder a little bit like the specific for the like elite Supercross riders that like use the clutch to seat bands. I wonder about that on electric.
But you're not lacking though. So if you think of
but it's not like a 450 is not lacking either, but it's the rapid acceleration that you need like on a really, really steep up ramp to stop you going over the bars. So I worry about that like on an electric bike. Like
so it gears out on a gas bike, right? So like say if you go over a Supercross jump and you're in the air and there's a gyroscopic to affect the pitch of the bike. You only that gears out to a certain. Like if you do that in second gear, it goes to the top of second gear, and you're only going to. And it'll.
I understand. Yeah, you can just spin the rear wheel. It keeps going,
and that was the big thing he was talking about with the jumping the electric bike is because it can keep going up. You can really change the pitch of the bike, and
with the speed of the rear wheel.
If you
not limited by the gear,
correct, and then if you stab the brake, you're not going to stall it. So he said it's. For how heavy it is, it felt in the air way lighter because the amount of control he had over the pitch was insane. But that's the thing. So all of the stuff that you would think about is the first thing he tried to do on it, and he was like, it literally makes that easier. Yeah, which is I'm getting chills thinking about it. Really.
Yeah, well, that'd be interesting to see. My buddy in Australia, Mike Sleater, I think he's doing like the Stark Varg thing now, so I have to get him trying to get in contact with like these SMX people or somebody to debut this bike, put it on the track in front of the fans. And like I said, I'm old school because I'm like a gas guy, but that's coming.
Yeah.
It would be really good if, like Formula One have like the hybrid style thing, but don't know if that'll ever work right now.
I think having both, honestly, I think that. But then also, I think when technology just keeps excelling, whatever, especially in performance, whatever ends up being the top in performance is going to be the direction that something's going to end up going. And that's the bitter pill to swallow one day, you know.
Yeah, and it'll be a new dynamic learning suspension on that, like you said, that doesn't have the inertia of the rotating mass with the engine. So that'll be a whole new thing to learn. And
well, then there's also, I don't know that the Varg has it, but I know like the Energica road race bike, it had it where there's a bunch of gyros in it.
In the center of the battery.
In the center, to go and give it that feel. And that's what was interesting about it.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, it did not feel foreign at all. It's really, really weird, and then lean angle sensors, and kind of like MotoGP where because it has to give the appropriate power to the wheel with
the lean angle,
correct, but also not having wheel spin. So it has that part, the software of it was outstanding. Like you could get on the throttle really, really hard, and almost the pitch of the bike was going to determine how much of that power got to the wheel. It was only going to give it enough until it's like almost going to spin. And then how fast the computer can detect, say if you go over like sand in the road or something like that, and it starts to break traction to be able to catch that reasonably. Without being a high side. It's nuts. And then that's one thing I wanted to ask you is in your realm with suspension, like I know in road race stuff, electronically controlled suspension's been a thing for a long time. Do you see that being something down the line in what we do with motocross, or is
it would have to be like with the AMA and the rules, because right now you're not allowed to do anything like that.
Oh, I gotcha.
But like there's some things that I've asked KYB to work on, and they've taken some ideas on, like just as basic as like the mountain bikes with the Bluetooth shifting the derailleur, like that. Like I wanted like some adjustment, like Bluetooth on the handlebars for the like high speed adjuster on the shock. So there's things that they're already working on, but it needs the rule book to change for that to come in for racing, for motocross. And then that side of it too, I worry a little bit about like electronics failing with suspension and then it being a little bit dangerous. But there's, they put fail-safe things in that.
That's something I think is maybe unique to Supercross, especially, or maybe Supercross and Motocross, where say in road race you had something like that fail, you still have brakes, you're still on the ground, and it'll definitely affect the geometry or the feel. And if you're at the absolute limit in a racing environment, then it could be a pretty big problem, but it's detectable by the rider, and they have a chance to react to it.
Yeah.
Where if you have a failure like that, and then the G forces in a rhythm section, it's not. I mean, if it fails like that, it's already bad.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what comes down the pipeline here pretty soon. They'll probably like the super intelligent software guys listening to this are probably like, nope, there's already something for that. Like,
that'd be awesome if they did. That blows my mind. It's like anytime I feel like I'm getting deep, and they're like, bud, we solved that problem
already
so
done
long
it.
ago.
Yeah,
Don't
already
worry
done
about
it on the trophy trucks. Electronic suspension.
You were talking a little bit about the team dynamic and how that's crucial to have success with the team or race effort with riders. Do you have, in your experience, where times maybe a rider's super picky or critical about something, or another guy almost you could put him on a horse and he's going to go win, or what's it like dealing with that? And almost, do you have to? A lot of guys I talk to say there's this almost a psychology in working with riders, especially with what you do, because there's a lot of trust. That has to be a two-way street.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to talk to the riders to show them like you're intelligent enough and you know what you're talking about, and then they can trust you, but you can't give them too much information because you don't want them thinking about this stuff while they're riding. I've done that a little bit in the past with some riders because they wanted to know and I've told them, and it's backfired. And then because when they ask you, what about this? And they only remember 50% of what you've told them. And then you go, no, that's not that. And then they'll almost debate with you about, no, you said this. And they're like, well, I said that part of it, but there's this element to it as well. And then they get so stuck on it. So you don't want to tell the rider too much, but you want to speak their language. So each rider, depending on who they worked with in the past or how they describe something on the bike, listen to them, what they're saying, and interpret it. And some riders will actually be completely 100% the wrong direction. And then you have to read that and then ask them a few more questions. What about this? What about this? What feeling did you have here? And then have them explain that. And then you can be like, okay, they're 100% wrong. But in their mind, they're 100% right the way they're explaining it. But the way that we interpret it, you just have to be like, okay, he's just explaining a little bit back to front. I know that sounds a little bit confusing to people when I'm trying to explain this, but it's just, you just have to speak their language and what they're trying to describe. And you can watch video with them and then tell them to hit pause on the video and explain to me in the corner, like, what are you feeling in this part of the corner, and break the corner up or break the bike up into braking, accelerating. Like, what are you feeling here? And then, like I said, a lot of these teams, pretty much detectives, and they'll write down their notes and then go to the playbook, what they want to do or create something new. You don't want to go too big of a change on race day because they need to be able to feel like a little improvement, and then you can try and improve again the next session. But if you have a failure, you try to make a big swing and you have a failure, you lose a little bit of trust with the rider, and then you lose their confidence. And you lose their confidence, it's really difficult because you have to earn it back, and it doesn't happen like overnight. You have to build it back up over weeks. So when a rider switches teams, you've got to, in the off season, build that trust with them, and then hopefully they see their lap times getting faster, and then they start to speak your language, and then you can rub off on them, they can rub off on you, and then, but everybody on the team has to be speaking the same language, and then that gets back to the dynamic when the rider says something and we all can pick up on it, and we all almost like on the crew, we look at each other and we almost know what we're going to do, but we just let the rider finish. Like, don't interrupt them, just let them finish. Even if they go off on a tangent, just let them finish, because they like have to have us sit there listening to them, what they want from the bike and what they expect to be able to do what they need to do. So just listen to them, and then the rider will go off, make their lunch or go take a nap, and then we'll make a plan what we can do, and then get with the mechanic, because the mechanics are usually pretty busy changing clutch, changing filters, doing whatever they need to do, but try to keep the mechanic updated on what we're doing. You can't really call them away for a meeting, but as they're doing their bike work, try not to distract them, but give them the plan on what we're doing. And then Rich, our crew chief, he'll go out and deliver it to the mechanic at the appropriate time, whether it be fork height change or a wheel change, sprocket change, whatever needs to be done to try and do that to make it comfortable. And you, like, it's back to like a little bit what you were saying about the rider, like trusting what we're doing, and then how they can adapt to a change. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how Eli was so good at Anaheim 1 this year, and he actually surprised me, because I thought we were really good coming into the season. Like testing, I had it was a little bit out of the box, like a triple clamp on the bike, what I wanted to do, like a little bit of a rake and trail setup, what I was doing with the rear end compared to the front. And then we went up to the high desert Mumford's track to break the bikes in. It was just meant to be pure break the bikes in on Tuesday. And I come back from the first practice session, I was chatting to somebody else out on the track, and when I got back, the forks were off, the shock was off, and I was like, oh, like we'd done 3 months worth of work, and it was all just off. And then so we did a big change, and we went out, and Eli went quicker, and he's like, trust me, this is going to work. So that's where I had to take a step back and trust him, because he's the one riding this bike. We didn't have a whole lot of information on the new bike, and then he goes out and wins Anaheim. Like, and when he crashed, I was like, oh, it's because we changed that part. And we changed that part. But then he just roared back through the field, and I was like, oh, okay. And then we got to try and learn from that, like, why all of a sudden did he want that change? But like, I had to trust him. He's got so much experience at this level. But it was this whole like chassis spec that I'd come up with in the off season. I thought it was just going to be the best thing ever, and practice and everything was going good. And then, we went up to Mumford's, and everybody was there. Like the KTM guys were there, Chase were there. They were fast, and Eli was a little bit off the pace. And it's like, he's that confident. It's like, it ain't me. It's the bike. So then we just flipped the whole thing upside down, and then he was right. So it humbles you. You're like, you think you're good at this stuff, and then that just completely humbled me. Like, wow, I was not expecting that. But I didn't get upset about it. You just got to roll with it and do the best you can to facilitate his needs. He knew something I didn't. And like, I'd been riding a production bike at the time. I'd had one for 2 months, the 23, and I didn't feel anything that he was talking about. So that's just the different levels that these guys are at. And I was like, whoa. Yeah, he was like a second and a half off the pace that day. And he's like, nope. It ain't me, it's the bike. And we had to go find like a second and a half in the bike setup. And whatever I did for Eli that day too, like I did for Dylan. So that was a massive day. And then coming up with that, then you've got to make sure there's a race spare, a practice set for the next week. So then you got to get like 6 sets of suspension all done. Yeah. And then that's the other challenge with this SMX. Like last week, seems like it was more catered to Supercross, and then this week's going to be more catered to motocross. So everybody's been building motocross stuff, or somewhat of a mix match motocross Supercross, and then the full Supercross. So it'll be like you try to have a team strategy coming in on what you're going to do, but nobody's ridden the track. Nobody has any data on what this dirt's going to be, because it's like a man-made track. So everybody just through all their experience trying to take their best guess at what we're going to do, and then you're just going to show up to practice with what we all think as a group is the best, and then come back, and hopefully the riders not too angry or not too upset, because it's embarrassing for them too if they're not like up on the board on top of the qualifying. They know they can go fast, and we have to provide them with something, and then hopefully we can respond and get a little bit better, and then peak by the time it comes to the main events is the goal. Instead of like having a big peak and a big valley, we just want to be like a little bit of a linear trajectory, like 45-degree angle of just getting better and better each session. So hopefully we can get there.
Is it something just as a generalization looking at it, do the rhythms in the Supercross parts of the track, like, is that almost a killer for the whole motocross part of the track?
It can be, yeah, especially when like guys look at the track map and they know they're going to be jumping quads and stuff like that. Then, yeah, so I haven't seen the track yet. I was busy like working on the truck today, like servicing some suspension.
It looks good. It looks really good.
Yeah.
The dirt looks, I mean, to me, it looks like dirt, like Iron Man kind of dirt. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a pretty decent sized rhythm section, and it's so big too. The layout, like I only saw one part, but I mean, it's huge. How it goes off in the back, and I think it goes like over the track and
I saw
out
that.
the wall and everything. I was like, it's insane.
I saw that part of it.
Yeah, but then well, it's funny. So like for us, we're prepared to go any direction that we need to, mm-hmm. But we're kind of limited the same way. I mean, we could answer to like what the dirt should be like, but we don't know what the prep's going to be like.
Yeah.
Which like last week was a good example. It was a dust bowl in practice.
Friday, yeah.
And then it was snot mess.
Yeah, and we were chasing it Friday, going softer, and then Saturday there was some moisture in it. Then you go back stiffer. So I wonder this too. Like it's ripped, it's graded, and then that takes up like 50% of your travel right there because the dirt's soft, and then it packs in. And then it becomes hard. Yeah, and I can't tell if it's going to pack in and end up being hard packed because I think it's grass underneath. It's all soil, and it seems like it'd be tacky, like a lot of load on the bike. Yep.
And which might make it. Never mind. I'm stepping out of my lane because I was going to say it might make it a little bit easier transition because you need more hold up in the tacky stuff.
Yep.
But it needs to be compliant. And what's compliant in a supercross rhythm versus a tacky, rough motocross track is, I think, two different settings.
And if the bumps, like they water them and then you get ruts on Friday and then they dry, kind of dry hard, and they can't really water it a whole lot more because then the ruts will fill up with water. So usually they'll have to rip it again. So you rip it again and put more water in again, then it gets even softer the next day. But it just depends on what they're going to do. So you're going to have to keep an eye on what they're doing for track prep and if they leave some of the ruts or not, or what they do. Like we got to be aware of how they're watering and prepping the track from Friday to Saturday.
Hey, I just got to make sure that the tires are dialed.
Yeah.
Hey, but I don't envy being you because I don't have to solve that Rubik's Cube, man.
Do you think anybody's going to try and put a paddle on?
I don't know. I'm sure there's people thinking about it. There's people thinking of, if we went to a flat track race, some people would be thinking about it. Like I guarantee someone would still ask at a flat track race, hey, should I put a paddle on? You could help on the start. And it's like, there's guys that are comfortable with it. I don't hardly ever see it in Supercross.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what I would use. And it's a very, especially in Supercross, it's a very specific type of condition that would merit that tire.
Yeah. How much these guys scrub off the faces these days? It'd be a little scary with a paddle.
And the main thing is in those conditions when the mud gets really sticky, then a paddle's going to clear a lot easier. But it's like a small window of when it's the right move.
Yeah.
But then we say that, and then your guy will go and win at Bud's Creek. On it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the stuff where, and then you go to try to replicate that this year, and the Jet and Plessinger get outstanding starts on knobbies.
Yep.
So it's right one day and then it's wrong the next day, and it's the same thing, and so it's so much on the rider and how they deal with the conditions. And honestly, I think if the guy's fired up, he's going to perform better, so is the paddle gonna make him feel like he's got an edge? Maybe that might help them. Maybe that might be enough for him to really focus and hang it out. There's a lot of stuff that you can't quantify or measure, that goes into it. And so I have no idea, but I do know aside from a paddle, we're prepared for anything. You know? But that's what's exciting is my lane is a little less quite a bit less complex than yours. But what's cool to see is you're not sure how it's going to be. The next team over is not sure how it's going to be. Nobody knows exactly what it's going to be. Chances are from Friday to Saturday, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And watching you guys go to work and produce something by the night show that's competitive is so freaking cool. Yeah. Like that was the coolest thing about last week over in Charlotte was just how it all fell together. And then even behind the scenes, you know, for the whole operation, like management and administrative personnel, you know, it was new to everybody. And thankfully it's all the same people that we're traveling with and working with every single event and throughout the year. So it's not like I'm not over here trying to break into the facility. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm stopping by with coffee, saying hi to the same guy every day, you know, so he knows that I'm not trying to pull a fast one, you know. And so everybody kind of was pretty mellow and let everything fall into place, you know, whether there was bugs to work out or not. It all went together really well, and the event itself turned out really good, which was cool because that's a big. You could take a deep breath and be happy about that when walking away from it because you got it behind you, but going into it, you're like, damn.
Yeah, I was a little bit negative going into it, like, man, I don't know, because it was so much work to get prepped for it.
Yeah.
But I got a question. Do you think with the lack of, well, not lack, there's just not as many jumps as last week, do you think that a moose would be an option?
I don't know. I
didn't see if there's any rocks in the dirt or anything. But
how rough it is, and that all depends on how the track develops. And to your point with the rocks too.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of the way that the dirt came apart when they were building the rhythm sections, which I'm talking about a track that's not completely done being built. So I don't know. But it almost looks rocky, but then you step on it and it's like the scuff from the front loader.
Oh,
like
okay.
a blade. It leaves like a residue where it makes it look like a rock, but it's a chunk of mud.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. Again, that's all the type of stuff that you can't find out until the day of or until you get some bikes on it.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you last week when I think I saw Jet pull into the mechanics area, like somebody said he might have had a flat. Like, I don't know if he did or not, but I saw a lot of rocks on the track, and we normally don't run a moose in Supercross.
Yeah.
But that's, I think because of whoops, it doesn't really deform good enough for whoops to get traction, but there's no whoops.
Yeah.
So I was like, is it something we need to be looking at? Like, I don't know. Maybe after chatting with you here, like tonight, I'll get with the team tomorrow. I'm like, do we need to go get a moose mounted? Like, you know, like just to be ready?
Yeah, I don't know. Brian Fleck's the man to ask for that one. You know, I think he'll make the right call with whichever way we need to go. But ultimately, it's your guys' choice, you know, and
it just sucks for you guys having to fit them.
You know, we think we're like, finally we're out of the woods, but no, we're ready for that. Yeah. Whatever we got to do. It's just those are the type of things you don't know just by eyeballing it.
Yeah, and that could be the evolution of the series.
That's what's cool about it, you know? So that's what I get for talking smack, being like, oh, I'm going to watch you try and figure it out. And you're like, oh, well, maybe we might run a moose, dog. You know what I mean? So like, we don't know. However it develops, you know, we'll be ready whichever way it goes. But I'm excited for it, man. It's been, for it being what we're going into race number 30. And I'm still eager to see how the weekend plays out.
Yeah.
You know, and any time that you can get something like that deep into the season, that's pretty cool. That's really cool. And then you want to make it crazy and change the point structure to what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're basically all in, and then you're all in again, and then you're all in again.
Yeah.
You know, which is really neat. And I'm curious to see what happens, and it's cool to see your new guy over there in blue. You know, you got number 2 over there and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm still trying to learn him and learn what he needs, you know, to perform at his level. The team know him really well because they've worked with him since he was a kid.
Yeah.
And they were really successful with him on the 250 program. So, like, I just stand back and I'll ask my questions, but I'm just trying to take as much as I can, trying to learn him.
Yeah.
And see what pops up.
In your experience, do you have it where, say, you take like outdoors, because I think the tracks are a lot more diverse in outdoor, the conditions. Is there a drastic swing with setups, or are you making big changes? I know it's not ideal to make a big change, but do you see a lot more of that in outdoors than you typically would in Supercross?
Because like in the US, they ride Supercross pretty much 7-8 months of the year. And then when you go into outdoors, the first setup you do outdoors, 90% of the time the riders will say it's too soft. It's too soft because they're coming from Supercross. And that's a little bit of, I think, like the disadvantage we have on the world stage against MXGP guys, because they're riding that softer stuff and it's more compliant and they can have more bike angle and rutted conditions, and you see their conditions, like they don't prep their tracks like we do. Like MXGP, they're rough, chuck holes, big bumps that are rock hard. Our tracks are prepped, nice and fluffy and loamy. So the main thing when we're going from Supercross to Motocross is just trying to get it so they can ride it and then get them used to the bike moving more underneath them. Once they get used to that, then you can get on a bit of a base setup. And then from track to track, you can tune for the conditions. You're not doing big changes at that point, but it does take about three or four races coming from Supercross into Motocross to get them, even if they're little changes, but it's still like pulling the suspension apart, changing valving or springs or whatever you need to do to get them comfortable, because they're coming off of Supercross. And then getting their eyes used to the speed. And then that's one thing too, like on the weekend, the North Carolina race, Charlotte, like I saw the track map and I thought to myself, oh man, this is going to be slow. And then when I watched the guys how fast they were going, I'm like, I'm such an idiot. Like, this is a drag strip. Like, why would I think it's going to be slow? Like, look at the lanes. It's a drag strip.
It's literally built for speed.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I saw had the tight little turns, but then they're going like top speed 50 miles an hour, like into the finish line. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Dude, Deegan on the 250 facing into the finish line, like almost.
And you could see everyone by the last race, pretty much everyone was jumping into the face of the finish line. But Friday, everyone was kind of landing, squirt, then a little bit of a gas or a little bit of a scrub and breaking up the face. And then by the last main event, everybody was wide open into the finish line.
Is that something, if you measured your wheelbase, would it be like an inch longer?
After that, yeah, bikes are stretching.
Yeah, new frame. Screw it. Like.
Yeah, and like that's him, the evolution of what these kids are doing. Like, he's pushing the bike to the absolute limit. Like, you wouldn't think that's possible. Like you were saying, there's some turns, looks like riders, when Dylan he's pretty much crashing, but he's just going so fast. He's able to maintain the speed. And then you see Deegan, some of the stuff that he's doing, you're like, yeah, he's going to crash, pulls it off. And you're like, wow, that's that kid's style.
He did that. Yeah.
That's what he's doing. And that's the evolution of...
It's normal to him.
The kids that are going to be coming behind him, watching him do that stuff.
I always... I'm trying to... You know Patrick Thrall?
No.
Or he worked at Rockstar Husky for a little while, and then he was working with Benny Bloss this year. Mm-hmm. He was RJ's mechanic this last bit. Yeah. Before he ended up parting ways with Husky. When he was working with RJ, I can't recall what race it was. It was Unadilla, I think. RJ came off the track, and he was a little shook up, and Patrick's like, "What's going on? Are you all right?" Like I saw he pulled off, and he's like, "Nah, I just had a big moment out there." You know, or something like that. Where RJ was kind of like, needed to take a second. And Patrick, he's like, I didn't see it. He's like, but I can't imagine what it was. He's like, because I've seen that guy lap after lap do something and save it. And it's like, would have taken seconds off of my life just watching him. Yeah. You know, he's like, whatever that was, you know, must have been so bad. And,
to scare him, he's tough as nails.
That dude kid is the gnarliest.
I know. I want to see him just back it down like 5% and just get help get through this stuff and be healthy, because he's a good rider.
Oh, dude.
But that's how he rides. And that's how he makes his living. Like,
and I bet
no one like me's got the right to tell him back it down, like that's what he does.
Would you say working with have you worked with somebody in the past that was pretty wild? Like if you look at Barsha's style,
yeah,
it's pretty loose and wild.
Yeah, when I was at Geico there, 2011.
Okay, there you go. Perfect example. So is a guy like that less sensitive to changes on the bike, or maybe I shouldn't say less sensitive, because when you say sensitive, it's like, can they detect changes or not? I mean more so as they can ride through maybe a setting that they're not gelling with, because they're already used to being
I understand what you kind of mean by that. The way I would reply to that is you have to evaluate his riding style. So he's aggressive. A lot of brakes, a lot of gas, a lot of body English. And so you have to have the bike because he's going to grab a heap of front brake. And if the fork's soft, it's going to get too deep and he's going to tuck the front and crash. So you have to evaluate that, take that into a consideration of how he rides or where he leans the bike. He leans the bike a lot while he's still braking. So it has to be stiff enough that it's not going to pitch, but it has to have enough traction on the side of the tire where he's not going to lose the front. So you have to take all that into account, and that's when you've got to lean on if they've got somebody on the team, and at the time it was Mike LaRocco, and he taught me a lot, like evaluating what that rider's doing and what they're asking for. It's not that he's not sensitive. You just have to have the bike perform to what he's doing to it. And then another rider, on the other hand, who was like just as good at the time was Will Hahn, and he's a lot smaller stature, a lot smoother on the bike, and doesn't manipulate the bike as much as Barsha. Like Barsha will whip the thing upside down.
He'll shift in the air and then downshift.
And then hit the back brake and rev it all back up.
All in the same jump.
Yep. He's just got so much going on. He's just like a firecracker ready to go. And then, then there's Will Hahn, who's doing just as good at lap times at the practice track. A completely different way of riding. He's a little bit more methodical. So things don't need to be as stiff. Probably doesn't need as much rebound damping because he's like a smaller guy. Won't have as heavy as spring rates. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. But it's you can't really pick on a guy that not having the feel. And like some people would say that a lot about AP. AP is not a good test rider, but I really like testing with AP because he can hit the same line every single lap. He might not be able to tell you what it's doing. It doesn't matter. Like it's on us then to tune the bike for him. But when we go to the test track, he can hit the same line every single lap, 50 laps in a row. Like we go to a test track, like that's an average day, 50 laps of Supercross, and he'll give it just as much effort at the start of the day as at the end of the day, and the track's blown out, and then that's perfect. That's all I need from a rider that's testing. Like, so it's not that anyone's like a bad test rider, just what you're expecting from them. You don't have to expect so much. Just ask them to do the same thing every lap, and then you can look at if there's some teams use data, or we can look at it and see what it's doing. And then just the easiest thing is the lap times, and then the effort that they need to put in as a rider to be able to do that lap time consistently. So it's different. It's like we said it about a team dynamic. It's like the human dynamic too, of being able to communicate with them and how to get the best out of them. But also us leading them down a path is a big part of it as well. And then back to the trust as well. Like, if you can get through all that, like without them crashing, and then because a lot of the time we're asking them to try stuff we don't really know what it's going to do, but the good thing I can still ride, and I can try a lot of that janky stuff and get rid of a lot of the crap. Use myself as a crash test dummy to get rid of most of the crap, and then deliver it to the guys.
That's pretty cool. For people listening that are going to be more average Joes and stuff, right? Tuning their own stuff. A lot of guys, I know a lot of guys that never check their sag, never mess with their clickers. They'll pay to get their suspension done. They'll send it in, get it back, still not check the sag. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give if someone's getting pretty serious about riding? They're gonna clear all the jumps. They might enter some races and stuff, amateur races. If they were going to set up their bikes, production bike, what would you recommend to them?
Having a good communication with the shop or whoever the suspension builder is, just having a good line of communication with that person. And, they're probably busy, but if you're respectable to them and you respect their time and don't keep them on the phone, but just if you're out riding, you have a problem, give that suspension person or that shop a call, even if they're not open on the weekend or whatever. Just be able to chat to them during the week and say, this is the problems I'm dealing with. Can you help me? Just give them a direction, because a lot of these shops, very reputable, they can do that and they give you like advice on how to do it. But the biggest thing is communication. Like you said, they'll all tell you to set the sag, and then they should have put a certain amount of preload on the rear spring to get you within a ballpark. So they're not going to put you on something that's dangerous, like running only like 50 mil a sag or running 200 mil or 150 mil a sag. They're going to get you like within the ballpark, knowing that you'll tell them your speed, your weight, and how you ride. They'll be able to get you pretty close. But the biggest thing is just the communication and just being safe, making sure everything's like your bike's worked on, like you were talking about. Just check your tire pressure before you even ride, just the basic stuff like that. If you got just regular spring forks, bleed the air out of your forks while the bike's on the stand. Just all that, the basic stuff like that. Make sure your bike's safe. And then when you're going out testing, just write down, if you're feeling something, just write it down and then call that suspension tuner during the week, and then they'll try and explain to you what you're feeling. And then that way you can try and move forward. And then you'll get a little bit better. And then like what you were saying, what Bones used to say in the magazines, just click your suspension one way, go ride, do a couple laps, and click it the other way, ride, do a couple laps. But everyone will give you your suspension on a base set of clickers with the compression number that it's on, maybe like 12, which is usually in the middle, and just try and stay somewhat in that range and just go a little bit one way, a little bit the other. And if you are trending and you like one way more stiffer, then maybe when you take it back, you might need a stiffer setup. If you're going clicking it stiffer and it's feeling better, the feeling that you're getting from the bike is better and the performance is getting better and the lap times are getting better, maybe you can tell that suspension guy then the next time around, because you have that line of communication with them, then they can have the next step for you to improve your riding. Or vice versa, going the other way. If you went softer and you got better going softer, communicate that to your suspension guy.
Now, another thing, how crucial is it, or how beneficial is it to have a trained suspension guy watch you ride?
Yeah, it helps. Depends on what level of rider you're looking at, but mainly most of like if just say you're a vet rider and you're going riding the vet tracks and you had a suspension tuner go with you, the main thing they're going to look at is the balance of the bike. Like in the corner, how does it ride? Is it rear low, rear high? That's what they're going to look at. And they're just going to tune your sag or manipulate your fork height up or down to get you balanced. That way you have equal amount of traction on the front and on the rear. Like a suspension tuner is mainly just going to get you balanced. And if there's an obstacle on the track, a big jump and you land and you're bottoming, then they'll make a change for that. But the main thing most guys will do is just try to get you balanced.
Now, what about for a more serious racer that's maybe B class, a bit faster? Once they start getting to that level. Yeah,
just lap times. It'll be more looking at the lap times and then having the suspension guy work with you that can see that if they do a certain thing to the suspension, maybe they open the reband up and it follows the ground a little better, and then that works for you. Then the suspension will maybe put that into like their notes, and the next time around they'll build a setting that's tailored more towards that, because the faster you go, the more mile per hour you're carrying, the suspension needs to react quicker, whether it's compression or rebound. But you want to keep your wheels on the ground as much as possible, because once they're on the ground, it feels almost like the wheels are glued to the ground. When you're coming into like a set of braking bumps and you get a big kick in the rear, you can't really grab as much front brake as you want because the rear wheel's in the air. So then a suspension tuner will see that and realize maybe you need heavier fork springs or more rebound damping in the rear or less to get the rear wheel to follow the ground, or different rear spring. But like the suspension tuner should be able to see that and understand like what it needs. But two, like try and learn and feel what your bike's doing. Even video, get someone to video you, and you can slow-mo it to try and see yourself what's going on.
I think that's one of the most important things that people can do. It's a simple thing, because when you do that, it helps with that whole, when guys are trying to describe a sensation that they're getting. Like I was saying, one time my suspension was too soft. It was a rough track, and so I went softer. Or no, it felt harsh, and it was a rough track, so I went softer, and it felt 10 times worse. If I had a video, I would have seen that I was too low in the stroke.
Yep.
You know, and then the track was really grippy, which is why it was getting ruddy, or really rough anyways. It wasn't square edge. It was just like really just rough. And so that is so much more load on everything that you got to go and compensate for a little more hold up.
Yeah.
You know, and I never would have thought of that. But if I watched a video, I'd be like, well, the bike looks, I know it feels like this, but it looks like it's doing something completely different.
Yeah. And a lot of the manuals, the owner's manual too, they have like little troubleshooting things. Like if it's doing this, do this.
Who writes those?
No.
Is that a Gilly thing?
No. I used to read it as a kid and be like, oh, okay. And then it would have a clicker setting for you to put into it what it's doing. It's kind of like the broad generalization. But
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But mainly too, like we were talking earlier, I would just read as much as I could, like Motocross Action and the magazines and all these test riders, what they're saying. And because a lot of the test riders that are riding in these magazines, like they're pretty good. They're being a high level pro, and then maybe they're tailoring off and a little bit older now, and then these guys know to try and tune for certain areas. Because like, what would you say the main dynamic of people consuming bikes are? Like for me, when I go to Parla, like the vet track is packed.
Yeah. And
they're the firefighters, the policemen. Even I see like Doc Alexander and Doc Bodner out there, like surgeons. Yeah. They're out there riding, you know. And then so these guys are all 35 plus, like into the 60s. Like they're the ones, the main consumers, like buying all this stuff, and probably the ones keeping the industry going. Because their bikes look good.
Yeah. No, I get a kick out of that. I tell you what though, that was I think it was a good feeling. Like I took 10 years off of riding, and it sucked. It sucked big time. But that 10 years is when I got to become a part of this. And then when I got that new 750, that GSXR, it got it in 21, and it was kind of funny because I remember being a young kid and barely being able to even have my first bike, my first 750, and it was so ratty because I put like 40,000 miles on it, and just it'd been crashed. I crashed it a couple times, you know, and it zip tying it together, safety wiring it together and stuff, and then to come out and ride on a new bike and like just feel good about it, and I had my old leathers, and I took them down to Anthony's Leather Repair in SoCal. And then I think it's in Newport maybe. And he went refurbished all my leathers. So like everything was all like clean and fresh. And I was like, damn, dude, I'm like a plus 30 guy with like a bitchin' new setup. Yeah. You know, my wife with me at the track and stuff. But
you got tire warmers?
You know what? I do. Check this out. The new tires are a lot more resilient to heat cycles. So I would say if you have race tires, for sure, you absolutely, it's worth having tire warmers. I mean, you could get away with it. They're gonna warm up, but you're gonna heat cycle the tire. The amount of heat cycles that the tire can take is a lot more. When I was coming up, it was like 17 heat cycles and they were done. And it didn't matter if they had tread or not, they would be gone. You know, and that was kind of across the board between all manufacturers. Now it's double or triple that. You know, I don't know the numbers specifically verbatim, you know, so like I wouldn't say that I'm qualified. I deal with all the dirt stuff, but what I do know is the tires that I've ridden on, I've been pretty negligent with them, just out of curiosity, and I'm not really at the same level that I was 10 years ago, but the tires ain't the problem if I got issues with speed. You know, number one, it would be me messing with my own clickers and kind of getting that back, learning the new bike, but also the tires are badass. You know, nowadays, just the technology in them. I would say tires are just a lot more versatile, maybe more durable, consistent, dependable, reliable. That part. It used to be like you would get outright traction and performance, but you didn't know how long it was going to hang on.
Yeah.
You just rip right through it. And now they're very sensitive to temperature, like ambient temperature. So you have different compounds for specific conditions. So I did notice when it was cooler in the day, and this is all road race stuff. When it was cooler in the day, I had to use a harder compound because that was able to handle the load to generate the heat, to keep the heat into the carcass of the tire. Whereas if it was too soft of a compound, when it was cold, it would spin and it couldn't handle that, and it would just exponentially get worse and destroy the tire. Mm-hmm. And so it's the opposite of what you think. You would think, oh, it's cold, you need something softer. It's not that. You want a harder, durable tire and beat the hell out of it. And it wants more and more and more of that. Next thing you know, it's at operating temperature and you're hauling. Yeah. And it's cold outside. Like it's pretty cool. And I think that was really impressive to experience. You have to understand that, and you have to be aware of those things. I think people, it's always worth educating yourself as much as you can about whatever equipment you're riding on, and the tire guys I know, like Dale Kiefer has a lot of support, and other guys that maybe secondhand support these track days and the races and whatnot specifically for Dunlops, and all those guys are pretty knowledgeable. It's very comprehensive, but it's sometimes unorthodox to what you would think. Well, at least for me, because I took 10 years away from it and showed up, and it was different when I came back, but it's really, really cool. But as far as like tire warmers go and everything on the race stuff, it's always good to have that, and I think you should use that. I was kind of just seeing how it was, and I was impressed with what it was. I mean, I imagine it would be better with warmers and whatnot. And then on the they have these new tires, like you have like a Q5 and a Q5S, and those are going to be more like hyper sport track day tires. And those things, I mean, you can have your bike on the kickstand just sitting there, and then go out on the track and haul, and that's one thing, even in A group, seeing guys on those specific track day tires, but they're street tires, but they're riding them on the track, like seeing them hauling, crazy lean angle, good corner speed, hard on the gas, hard on the brakes, and they were good. Durability might be the part that you're losing out on, maybe, but I mean, they're you could do a lot more. It's kind of like our production stuff in Supercross or Motocross. The special tires versus the production tires. That gap is a lot closer now. Yeah, because it's all of the materials to make those tires that way, the design, the technology, the compounds, all of that, the way it's tied together, it's a lot more reasonable to be able to produce a tire that performs that well to the public. Yeah. And it's obtainable for us. It's obtainable. Like anybody listening could go buy those tires, and we had a tire take second place. It was a production tire leading the race within the last 3 years, I want to say. It was a production tire was on a factory bike leading the race. You know what I mean? Yeah. And almost won, and they had a mechanical issue, and they took second place on production. You know what I mean? And like it just shows how capable it is, and I think though it's not the outright performance that you lose. It would just be, I think, consistency. I think that what the race tires are today, they maintain that, they provide a lot more consistency through the duration of the race. And I think that's the main difference. So it's one less variable in the equation, and that's really cool to see, because that's the same thing where I sit down, like I said, I feel how good the tires are. Like the tires ain't the problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool.
Are we close to getting like a dual compound?
I have no idea.
Is that happening?
I that type of stuff, I don't know. I only see what's in my hands when we make it to the race. I don't know anything about what's coming down the pipe or anything like that. That's Brian and Brock. They're the ones that deal with all that stuff and deal with Japan and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I believe that had been done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the detail of all that. And what's funny, it's more of, it's not for what you think. Because in road race, it's for outright surface area traction.
Yeah.
Right? It's not necessarily that way in motocross anymore, because the traction is generated a different way, achieved a different way, and the surface is different. So if you have, say, you get traction from the knobbies digging, right? But then you would think in hard pack you get traction from surface area or tire flex. Well, it's more so how it's able to disperse the load and handle the load, you know, and there's a lot of things that go into that. But it's the traction is proficient. You don't hear a whole lot about current modern tires with any manufacturer where it's like, man, the thing just doesn't grip. It's like a banana peel.
Yeah.
All the manufacturers are doing a pretty good job of generating traction.
Yeah.
So then it becomes more of consistent performance and being able to handle a wide variety, a broad application of terrain and variables. And then you have like bump compliance, you know, those imperfections going through the whoops, you know, that it needs to be able to take the G outs over here. So it's got to be pretty heavy duty, but then over going through the whoops and you have those weird little knuckles everywhere. You don't want it to deflect off of that, you know, and so there's that kind of stuff. So that's something like with the MX-34, it does that really well. It absorbs. It's a much more compliant tire, which is really impressive. What's impressive about it is not the technology. It's the fact that you can go to your dealer and get that on your bike. Like to me, that's the impressive part. We deal with stuff we're putting stuff on Tomac's bike, Jet's bike, all that. Like that we see that all, or for me at least, I see that all the time. But to see that go on my buddy's bike, you know what I mean? Like that's cool. That's the part where it's exciting. You know, it's really exciting, and even to be a part of it at a lower level. I mean, it's still like my role is to make sure the equipment gets installed properly, it's safe, and there's no mistakes. There's nothing that's going to fall back on us, and it's there to do what it needs to do. And I can guarantee that to anybody in the paddock, you know, that we can guarantee that as a whole, you know, I'm there for that. But just to be on the peripheral of watching you guys give us feedback, you guys ask us, hey, we're running into this issue. How does that affect the tire? Or blah, 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 blah. Is there an option to have something that holds up differently this way? Or they're noticing this sensation? Or how can I compensate for that? And like learning all of the stuff that's going into it. And then seeing that get addressed across the board on your end, on our end, you know, and you have that cycle happen a couple times, you know, eventually you come up with something that's a pretty good baseline where it's like, you know what, I think this could go into production. You know what I mean? And all of the work that goes into it, all the engineering that happens in Japan, the guys that are doing it. And a lot of times at the tire launch, those guys come to America, and you get to meet the people that designed it, you know. And then we have Jesse Wentland that's, you know, testing and doing all the stuff at the proving ground with Clark Styles, and it's just so much work from a really cool core group of people, and it's small. It's not a lot of people. It's small, you know. And then they put something out there that's badass, you know, that I get to enjoy and watch people compete with it, you know. And like I said, my role is to change the tire, make sure we're good. But I'll be damned if I'm not a sponge appreciating all of it, trying to soak it all in. And, you know, because going back to what we started this conversation for, it's like, why are you here? You know, you're here because you love it, you know, and you'll do what you have to do to be a part of it. You know, I think anybody listening, if you're a fan of moto, or if you're a fan of anything, whatever it is that you are passionate about in life, it may not always seem like you could make money doing it, and you probably can't, who knows, but you have to do those things that you're passionate about. There ain't no point if you're not doing something that
Yeah.
You're passionate about.
Yeah, what you get fulfillment out of.
Yeah. And it'll blow your mind how much better fit you are in the world or in the universe when you're doing something that you're passionate for. Because then that's the best version of you. Because you're happy. You know what I mean? You're pursuing happiness. And that, if you think about it, put it this way. I get pissed off. You get pissed off. We all get pissed off, right? Would you take advice from yourself when you're pissed off? No. So it'd be the worst advice you could give yourself, right? So, okay, think of it this way. If you're in a good mood, you're optimistic, if you're happy, would you take advice from yourself? Probably, right? So why wouldn't you try to optimize your life to where you're majority of the time you're spending it doing things that you love. You're spending it doing things that make you happy. People are drawn to that. People want to work with people who are happy, you know? So, I mean, we all get responsibility. We all have stuff that we have to make ends meet, you know, and that's different for everybody. That's the reality, right? But don't for one second think that there isn't a way to pursue what makes you happy, and then just go try to be the best at it. Do the best you can with it. Be the best version of yourself. And whether that makes you money or that puts you in an environment where you have good chemistry with people that will lead you down a path to opportunity or present opportunity, or if you're happier, your bandwidth isn't so tied up with the amount of stress that you have. Stress takes up all your bandwidth. It'll fill your plate up. Okay. So if you have too much stuff on your plate, you may not have the capacity to really notice opportunities around you, because you're constantly focused on all the shit you got to get off your plate, right? And that sucks. And a lot of people, I think, live their lives that way. And at every level in society, whether they're rich, poor, middle class, wealthy, whatever. I can't tell you. You got to think of it this way. I can't tell you how many times I sit in. We fly all the time, right? You fly all the time. You stick with an airline. Eventually, you get status with them because you're flying so damn much, and then you get upgraded to first class. I don't ever buy first class. We don't do that, but you end up flying that eventually. If you're flying to every race, you're going to get that status to do that, right? So, how many times do you think we're sitting down and obviously I like to talk? Person next to me, it's business person, whatever. All sorts of different people. Be people going on vacation. It could be someone dealing with tragedy. Somebody pursuing a new opportunity. A business person. Whatever. It's all sorts of different people. And if you get to talking out of curiosity, one thing leads to another. Hey, why are you going over to this area? What's going on? Oh, I'm seeing family. I'm doing this or that. What are you going for? Oh, I'm going for work. Well, what do you do for work? I check tire pressure. Like, what? Yeah, I change tires. Huh? Yeah. And then what happens is you end up having this whole conversation. I can't tell you how many times that like people that I talk to are like, wow, I really wish that, you know, I was doing something like you're doing, you know, and to me, it's not something to gloat or brag about. It's something to keep in perspective, that these long days spending away from your family, being out in the elements, changing 50 tires in a row without really leaving your stand, you know, all of that stuff, it's still worth it. It was something that I was excited to do the first time I got the call to do it. And I'm still excited to do it today. And I have to, don't get me wrong, I get frustrated, you know, especially when you're on the road with the same guys all the time. You see each other more than you see your family. And there's like, why do you chew that way, man? Like, you got to breathe out of your mouth all the time? Like zip it up, you know, like dumb stuff. But realistically, barring a major injury or catastrophic failure, you know, a bad day at the track is a better day than I could have anywhere else as far as work goes, you know. And
I feel like we're pretty lucky. Like dirt bikes, like there's so many different things you can do. And like I said, there's so many good people in the dirt bike. Everyone wants to help everyone else. And even like the local tracks, like everyone's helping each other, spare tubes, spare whatever. Like dirt bike communities, good people.
They're good people.
Yeah, we're lucky to be doing what we love and make a living out of it.
Well, I tell you what, man, We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Damn good people.
Yeah, I'm thankful to be doing what I'm doing, and then have an opportunity to meet friends like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gets me fired up. Yeah. And I always think about that. It's funny, I sent you that video from Donations. I think I talked about it last week, but I watch that every week. It's on my favorites on my phone.
Yeah.
Because I could scroll through stuff, little memories, and I'll watch that at you, and it freaking puts a smile every time. Because I was like, that's badass.
Yeah. Get 2 beers in me, and I get a little loopy. You might have to explain what that video was so people understand.
It's a celebration of
Donations.
I'm sure I'll post it. I don't think I've posted it before. I think I just sent it to a couple people. Mm-hmm. But we're at Donations, and they're trying to blow up Eli's bike, which testament to Star Racing Yamaha. The thing would not blow up. I'm sure it had beer in the tank.
Yeah, I know. Everyone that doesn't like that, yes, we should respect the bike that kept him safe and got into the wind. Yeah, but you just lose your mind when everybody's cheering and that, and then
I'll tell you what,
you lose your mind, and you just because you're so overwhelmed with excitement, you're just crazy. You want to do something crazy, and then everybody's just giving this bike up, and like fans are grabbing it and revving it, and everyone's just having a good time. It
was incredible. That was I think that was like a once in a lifetime kind of thing. Yeah, man. That was a beautiful day, and it was pouring rain, and you had Chase, Eli, and
Justin Cooper was there.
Yeah, and
remember Eli was pulling the tail off.
Yeah, and throwing it in the exhaust. But they're pinning the bike, and like I was gonna say, testament to Star building a damn good bike.
Yeah,
because
and then Zim brought a bike over, and then I think he took the race bike away and came back with a stock bike.
Yeah. Could you imagine?
Because people were losing their minds.
Could you imagine being the dealer that brought the display bike over? And they just roached.
He's probably pumped.
Yeah, but they didn't. They overheated the hell out of the bike, the Yamaha, but it held up, and it wouldn't stop running. That's for sure. Yeah. But anyways, so Gilly gets a hold of it, and it's his turn to rev it, and he grabs it, and he just violently shakes the hell out of it. And it looked like the setting he's talking about when he didn't have any clamping force on the shim stack.
Yeah,
because it was just bouncing up and down. Yeah. It's an epic video, but I'll have to post it. But I watch that at least once a month and get a kick out of it. But
that's the highs and the lows, and that was definitely a high. That was crazy.
That was a damn good high for sure. Well, sir, thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
I really,
thanks,
really
Anthony.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we'll see how everything goes the remainder of the season, and look forward to next season.
Yeah, thanks for helping us all year.
Oh, no problem. That's what we're here for.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.